Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 268. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Jim, Ragdoll of the Whatnot Segulin. One of the things we're doing this month, besides getting ready for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, is we're obviously following the big Flashpoint event, but we're also saying some goodbyes to some of our favorite titles that we've been enjoying. And two of them we want to hit on this episode is Secret Six and Birds of Prey. Absolutely my top two favorite books. And I know for Jim, he's in that same category. So these are ones we want to shout out. And hopefully you guys really enjoy this. And I hope it inspires people to go to websites, forums, stuff like that, and shout out books that they're enjoying. And they've been really enjoying the runs. Creators do look at the web. A lot of creators have their own forums, websites, and things like that, Facebook pages and stuff. Make sure to shout that out, because I think it's really important to let people know you've been enjoying something. Yes, this is work and they get paid for it and stuff like that, but you got to remember, as with any job, we all are working. Everybody who's listening to this, in some form, we're all working. And you like to be told when you're doing a good job, that positive feedback. And for writers, it's good to let people know, and artists and colorists and letterers and all that, let them know that their project that they worked on meant something to you. So they know in the future, like, hey, this is the kind of work that people want me to be doing. It's the kind of stuff that people really enjoyed. So it's good feedback to let them know that. So please make sure, out of this episode, if you have an opportunity, let those creators know, or just let the general public know that, hey, I've been really digging this. Tweet it, Facebook it, do whatever. Get the word out about comics that you're enjoying. That doesn't have to be exclusive to DC. Let's make this a month where we kind of celebrate some things that we're really digging. But these are two that Jim and I kind of wanted to shout out because of how special the books have been to both of us. And it's really great because these are two titles that have been wrapping up nicely and getting us ready for the 52, which I really appreciate. And I think that's something that thematically has been going on in a lot of the DC titles that I've been really enjoying this month, is as the new August books have been coming out gradually, I've been seeing creators who really put a lot of care into wrapping their title up in a nice, neat bow and putting us in a place where we can get really excited for September. And I really appreciate that loyalty to the fan base that creators do that with. So hopefully you guys enjoy this episode. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Over at dcbservice.com, our show sponsor, I really want to shout them out on this because I think it's super cool. That 52 special, they're repeating again this month with the number 2 issues. So all 52 number 2 issues are going to be 50% off. $159.48 is the regular price, $79.74 once again this month. And they're doing a special next month on the issue 3. I don't know if it's going to be the same special, but I really think it's cool they're recognizing that, hey, this is a pre-order system. If we're going to be doing this, we want to support our readers with the opportunity to get these at that discount. So I want to thank dcbservice.com for continuing that special. Also sponsoring us this episode is InStockTrades.com. Don't forget about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. We are talking this month about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 1. Alan Moore, Kevin O'Neill. Regularly $14.95, 38% off, only $9.27. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. And thank you, InStockTrades.com and DCBService.com for supporting the show. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
The Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
What was that?
I decided to hold the other syllable longer.
Wow.
It doesn't work as well.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But I'm glad you did it, because
you got to try new things. We got to try different things. I got to shake things up every so often.
Can you give us an enjoy?
Enjoy the show.
Very good. I like that. Thank you. Let's talk some comics. Jim, if everyone goes to RagingBullets.com right now, they'll actually see the contest entries are up there. And I think I finally got everybody. I just put the new one from Lewis up. Actually, it was an old one from Lewis up to make sure that we had everybody. And you and I were just having a discussion before the show. And I was asking you really for your opinion because I saw these as they were coming in. You got to see them all fresh together for the first time today. You had two of them that stood out for you.
Yeah.
Which were the two?
Well, we had Jordan Bell's song parody to Surfing USA, the Surfing DCU. I thought that was just really stuck with the whole summer aspect. What's more summer than the Beach Boys? And I do enjoy song parodies. I think it's a good way a nice fun thing to do. And I liked the lyrics that he laid out. It was a good job on that.
And wait, hang on one second. On that one, I do want to say Jordan submitted the lyrics. Even though there is a clip on there of the song, the lyrics were his submission, not the actual song, because he told me on there it was just to kind of give an idea of what the song was going to sound like. So the lyrics were the actual submission. Go ahead.
Well, and I tell you, I liked the song even. I thought that was a good job. And, but I do have to say, I really digged how he worked the full lyrics for the full song and, went through it's song parody is a tough thing to do. And he really followed the Beach Boys. When you can actually sing the song parody to the original music, I think that's just an outstanding job. So him and David Jones, a.k.a. Dr. Quantum. I really enjoyed the 2-page comic that he did with just what were the heroes doing, especially the ending. Hey, Aquaman, your chums tasted good.
That ride the lightning line had me in tears. I got to say they were all great entries. So Jordan Bell was the first one, and then the second entry was the Doc Quantum one. And so that'll be our first and second prize winners. I honestly got to say this was one of my favorite contests we've ever done because I genuinely found every entry entertaining. And I have enough prizes. I'm actually putting more prizes out of my own collection into the prize bag because I really want to give everybody who was a part of this contest a prize because I just really had so much fun with how entertaining all of them are. I encourage everyone to go to our website if you haven't already seen it. And I do, anytime I put new posts up, I do send them directly to Twitter. So if you like to find information from Twitter, please join our Twitter. We're currently on Google+, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and obviously our own website is the first source of information, plus we have our own show forum. But I have the website set up so whenever I put a new post on the website, it immediately goes to Twitter. So just if you're not currently following us on Twitter, do so if you want to see when our website's updated. But the contest entries were absolutely amazing. I thought everyone stuck with the theme. I thought we had just Mark Vickers had like an intense amount of entries. Eli had a new song up there. Lewis's one was really funny. Just every one as I was going through just really cracked me up. And they were clever. I think we've got a really clever listening audience, to be perfectly honest. So I'm going to be contacting everyone over the next week or so to make sure everyone gets prizes because I just really appreciate the participation in this and just how really, because it wasn't just, nobody threw in something. You know what I mean? It wasn't something, nothing looked like it was thrown together in like 2 minutes. People really spent some time putting these together and it shows in how clever they are. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed this batch of contest entries in particular, and I really want to thank everyone for participating. So congratulations to our first 2 prize winners, but really to everybody who participated. I thought that was cool. And if you haven't seen it, like I said, go to the website. Jim, before we kick into talking comics on this episode, I've been playing over the last 2 weeks Mass Effect 2 on my computer. And the reason why this is relevant to comics, I was thinking a lot about this game and what I'm enjoying about it. And it's a role-playing game. Kind of like the old Final Fantasies and stuff like that, but it's, very modern. They use, a lot of, with the technology increases and things like that, there's branching plot threads and, just great graphics. And I was playing 2 branching plot threads, this one with this shadow broker, who is kind of like a evil calculator in, the universe. So he, gets information and then uses it, manipulates it in ways to profit for himself, to then sell that information in a way that can be used for evil purposes. And he winds up being a very evil person as the story progresses. And I don't want to spoil that for anybody playing it other than just to say, that's what the Shadow Broker is. There's a point in time in the game where a character, though, does have a choice as far as whether or not to become the Shadow Broker. And it got me thinking when I was following that whole thread in the storyline, how great a game this would be as a comic book game. And this is really the direction comic book games should go. They should be role-playing games. They should be role-playing games with add-ons. A lot of the content for Mass Effect 2, they have the main game with its own branching arcs and stories and little side missions and quests you can go on. But it also has downloadable quests that can be added into the game that thematically tie into the ongoing conflict and turmoil in the universe of Mass Effect. which has multiple races and planets, and a lot of the stuff you're enjoying about things like Green Lantern and the Green Lantern Corps, and we enjoyed about Rebels, and we enjoy even on Earth in the DC universe where you see characters having different conflicts with different people all around the world. Think about like the Great 10, for example, and their dealings with Checkmate, those type of things. This game, like, naturally is a template for how you could do a DC universe game. And you wouldn't have to you could focus on just the Justice League, and you could make a character in the Justice League. But the cool part is if you use the universe proper as your role-playing world, it's a lot of, I love DC Universe Online, it's terrific, so this isn't a knock on that. I think we've seen comic book-based games heading in the right direction. In this Mass Effect, I was like, wow, I would love to see, which is very different. This isn't an MMO. This is totally, completely single-player, story-based. So it wouldn't be competition for the DC MMO. This would be something different. I would love to see this style of game done for the DC Universe. I think it's a great way for people who are gamers to get introduced to the characters. And if you use comic book writers to help create the storyline for it, you could then have it echoing the universe, so then people who are playing the game could pick up any comic book, and feel like they have an understanding of the universe, if that makes sense. Because, a lot of these, like Mass Effect has comic book tie-ins that are published by Dark Horse that are terrific. So I was thinking about something wow, you could do the reverse with this and use this game as a way, first of all, to make a ton of money, because, well-produced games that get a lot of good buzz do make money. But you could use downloadable content, add side quests and things like that as a way to expand the game to maybe further connect with the universe proper of DC. Not saying that, the DC universe has to change in any way for the game, but the game could be used as a launching point into the comics, which, would be a cool way to have a good, complete game that if people don't want to read the comics, they don't have to. But for people who are playing the game that get interested in the characters and want to jump into the comic books, it would be a good branching point. I don't know, just this game, the way its storyline is developed, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a comic book. I totally feel like I'm playing a comic book when I'm playing the game, and because it's long, it's epic, ongoing. The storyline actually continued from the first game. So, the first game ended and had a definitive ending, but there were enough dangling threads that, like a comic book series has when arcs end. There's threads that carry over that can then lead into another 12 issues afterwards, if that makes sense. This game could do that, and I would love to see this kind of thing be a way to use comic properties. Not just for the purpose of, obviously, building the comic book market up. You could. But it also would be a great way to use these great characters and properties that lend themselves to ongoing storytelling. This guy has love interests. This guy has friends. These are friends that come and go, but then appear again later, and sometimes the relationship is a change like they do in comic books due to events and circumstances that have happened along the way to him and to them. So there is a continuity to it all. It's really, this is what a comic book game should be. The game should feel like you're playing a comic book. This game is just a template to me. I really think they should be looking at the work BioWare is doing as a way to launch these characters into multimedia, and then use that as a way to get... I still think the role-playing video game audience is an untapped comic book audience that, with them going to digital, great opportunity from within game to connect them to your comic book buying engine, Comixology, or, the comic shop locator, however you want to do it, to get, new readers. And again, make profit off of a great game, because the game itself is going to make profit on its own. It would be then, nowadays it seems very popular with video games to monetize it by add-ons and extras. So what better extras are them to have them buying comic books along with the game while they're, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's just another extra that can go along with it. So I just think it's an untapped market. Not saying that it should affect what the writers are doing in the regular comic books, but I'm saying you've got opportunities to mirror and echo what's going on in the DC universe in a gaming world that could be quite interesting and exciting. I don't know, I was playing the game and it just really struck me. I'm like, this is really... I think the Batman Arkham games that have been coming out are heading in that direction. I mean, it's that kind of thing. We got a new storyline coming up in Arkham City and all that. I would love to see it taken one step further and do a lot of what BioWare is doing with Mass Effect. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the Batman game, because I think what's being done with those games are great. But you could take the DC properties, the whole entire universe, and do something like that, and just focus on one particular team or one particular group. And I think the Justice League, to me, is the one you do. And have, like, you can create your own Justice League member, but then the rest of your role-playing characters, your non-player characters that you travel around with, the characters that you upgrade aside from that, are the actual big members of the Justice League that we all know and love. Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, all these guys, Cyborg. The team that they're putting out right now, the new one that's coming in September, should be the team for that game. It's just my thought. So I'd love to see that. Cool. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a Suicide Squad game that's rumored, and I haven't heard anything more other than they announced that. I don't know if you remember it was quite a while ago we heard about that. I'm hoping that's still in play.
Yeah, that was a couple cons ago, and I don't think I remember hearing anyone mention it at San Diego. So that's another game that'd be, you could have fun with it just because of the nature of the Suicide Squad and just the nature of who's going to be on that team. You definitely could, personalize a team, run an individual, or even just, go full out, blast and kill kind of missions.
Yeah, well, and each character would be a different playing experience. So, Suicide Squad naturally lends itself to that, especially with the team they're looking at. You got Harley on it, you got Deadshot, those type of characters. Playing as Harley Quinn is going to be, if they went with those characters, for example, playing as Harley Quinn would be very different than playing as Deadshot. Plus, Harley Quinn has the advantage of being a character who's already in a best-selling video game in the Batman Arkham series. So if you take that character and have her in as a part of Suicide Squad, there is a connection to players who are already playing the Batman Arkham games for that. So I'm hoping that Suicide Squad game is going forward, is being developed. Development takes a long time for video games, so they could have been announcing that early in the development, and that's why we haven't heard anything. I'm hoping that's the case versus it's been shelved, but we haven't heard that either. Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting to me. Anyway, comic book end, Jim. One of the books I wanted to talk about, and I want to make sure we start with it, is Birds of Prey, if that's okay with you.
Oh, always.
Because that issue and I want to talk about the issue, Gail Simone's last issue, because that'll be actually the last issue of her run. It was issue 13. It was the second part of that crossover with the Huntress and the Question. I don't know, not really crossover, but Question was guest starring in it. And I thought it was really cool because it, in particular with its focus on the Huntress, it was showing us how far she has evolved in this particular run. In 13 issues of this series, we've seen her become, I don't want to say more independent, because she's always been independent. It's actually, she's gotten more confidence. She's become more of a team player. She's honestly no longer the outsider of this group. She has embraced the fact that this team is important to her, and her role on this team is important. And that's something I've liked about the evolution of her character. We saw that when she stepped in as Black Canary second and actually took over and was going to fight Lady Shiva, and then continuing to the point where we've got her at now with this mission with the Question. There's a lot of confidence there and a lot of need to protect the other members of her team, which made her an ideal choice to become the squad leader in this issue. That was the way it ended. I'm kind of sad. I'm like, okay, she's squad leader, and that's gonna, we only got 2 more issues. But I so love that that's where it went with her. I'm glad that she got into that role, and that they were acknowledging the fact that, Black Canary's taken a couple steps back since the divorce. This was an opportunity then. They needed a new squad leader, and who would it be? Huntress, who's not in that place. She hasn't gone through that emotional turmoil. If anything, her life since she's come back to the Birds has gotten nothing but more solid and better. And she's the natural person, the logical evolutionary step of this team to put in that role. I loved that about this issue.
Yeah, and it's actually I loved the issue. I was reading that at the end. I'm like, no, I want more. And it was that bittersweet, where it's the sweet where you get a cool story, and you have fun reading and you enjoy it, but then at the end you realize this is it. But the one thing I do hold on to is they talked about there was going to be a Huntress, a miniseries.
Yes, Paul Levitz.
So the character's still going to be around, and I'm hoping we get the same kind of vibe that we're getting from this really cool character in the post reboot, because everything you're saying, I'm sitting back here just nodding my head, going yes, yes, yes. This was just a wonderful, just emotional character growth, and just her being this really becoming the hero. And she's always was a hero, and I'm not taking anything away from that. Right. But this, to me, she had more of a superhero quality by the end and not as much a vigilante quality, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense, and what I love about it, though, is it doesn't ignore that that's who she was before. That's why I said evolution, and I agree with you. You and I are totally in sync on this. It's what I've loved about it being a part of a run. This wasn't done in one or two issues. This was done over, first of all, Gail Simone's first run on Birds of Prey, but in this run, even more so, I think, because of what Dinah Lance had been going through before this team got back together again. It was a great opportunity for the writer to take a look at and not ignore everything that's happened to these characters since, what Huntress went through in Revelations and stuff like that. It's clear that, there's been a sense of progression with all these characters, and she's looked at some of the turmoil that Black Canary's gone through and taken a look at a lot of the things that, the friendships that Huntress has formed and some of the ways that she's had to deal with herself during that time off, and really brought it to a head when the team all came back together and how they all needed each other, and they found that bond again with each other, and they made each other something more, and it gave that opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, Black Canary really isn't ready to assume this role, not the way that she did before. Let's show that. Let's show why this girl should be the one, why she's reached this point, why she really is something more. I'm thrilled she's getting a miniseries, and Paul Levitt's writing it gives me a lot of confidence, and I'm hoping that it's a series that, the miniseries, is something that leads to an ongoing, because first of all, we've been reading her monthly in this book. I would love to continue reading this character monthly because she's very important to me. She's one of those characters that I need my Huntress fix. So I'm hoping that she is part of. I don't know if they're doing these in waves or how they're going to be announcing new books. I don't think it's necessarily necessary to have we're going to do another 20-book wave. You don't necessarily need to do it that way. I'm hoping the miniseries itself, when if it's successful, leads to its own ongoing without it having to. However they're going to do this next, if they're going to do a second wave of these titles, or if they're going to just individually over time add more titles of this, I don't know. But that's definitely one I want a Huntress solo.
Yeah, and it's funny, as you're talking, something kind of just clicked in my head that you're talking how Dinah wasn't ready to take back the command, wasn't ready to be, and normally for me, I would have an issue with a hero, kind of hey, I would be sitting there saying, hey, knuckle up, suck it up, you got a job to do. But the way the story laid out, the way everything played out, it didn't take anything away from her.
Yes.
It made her just as much of a cool character as she was before. I never once sat there saying, oh, come on, quit whining. It was laid out so you really felt for her, you understood where she was coming from, and she still did her job. She just wasn't the same person she was, so Huntress needed to up her game a little bit, and I thought that's a great way to push somebody up, inflate their character, get them a little bit more in the spotlight without taking anything away. It's we talk with wrestling a lot of times where you have a big match at a pay-per-view where the one character loses clean, and it could by losing clean, it could very easily take away some of their heat, some of their popularity. But if the match is a good enough match where both, the people in the ring are really just putting it over, giving everything they got into it, it doesn't take away. The loss doesn't take away anything from the guy who loses, and it still inflates the one who wins. And
Right.
This is kind of like that same, I kind of have that same analogy feel with the way the Birds went, where we get characters getting inflated without taking away from any other team member.
Well, what I loved about it wasn't a membership drive for the team leader role. It didn't work that way. It organically happened in the story. Dinah Lance was seemingly taking on the squad leader role again, and she wasn't, you're right, she wasn't shirking her duty. She was doing everything she's normally done. What happened was, just over time, the way Huntress's character was being developed, it was something that Oracle noticed. And they were all shocked when that's what I loved about it. They were shocked that Oracle was saying Huntress needs to be the squad leader. They didn't see it coming. Huntress wasn't trying to push Dinah out of the way. It wasn't the way it was. It just happened. It was something she stepped up when she needed to. Dinah, needed a friend there. She was there. Dinah was doing her duty. She was doing her thing. And that's why you're right. Dinah Lance, Black Canary, didn't lose anything in this. She's just as interesting as she's always been. She's human. I love the humanity of her. She's still a top-tier character to me. That didn't take anything away from that. If anything, it strengthened it. See, to me, the reality of these characters and showing that they're multifaceted, showing that they have humanity, and they keep sucking it up and fighting, which is what you were mentioning before, was what I liked about Dinah Lance in this. That made me respect her even more. But to see that Huntress has then upped her game that much more, it made me love Huntress more. Not take anything away from Black Canary. And you're right. That's amen. That's the way it did it. I love the unique nature of it. Can we get a book with the question? She was so perfect. Maybe a buddy book with these two. Because Huntress, okay, I'll take it back. I said Huntress solo series. I want to see Huntress monthly somewhere. So if the mini isn't going to lead to her being in a solo series, that's fine. I'm cool with that. Do a buddy book with Huntress and the Question. These two play off each other so well. I loved the tete-a-tete between the two. They're not afraid to kind of tease each other a little bit. I love to the point where, Huntress is saying we're going into certain death and that type of thing. And Question's like, whoa, wait a minute, hang on. You didn't ask me. What is this assumption that I'm just going to go with you? Because she's not a part of the birds. And I love that because that's real in this type of situation with Junior and what they were going through. I mean, Junior is real major league creepy. At this point in time, I'm sure the Question, with how connected the Question is, has at least an idea of what they're dealing with Junior. Or, at least heard the name or something like that, hushed in, corners or things like that. I loved how, awfully assumptive, aren't we? Just such a great moment because that's something that friends would go through. And you knew she was going to go along. Huntress knew she was going to go along. The Question knew she was going to go along. It was just witty banter between the two that felt natural, that felt human. That's one of the reasons why is Gail Simone my favorite author. I love dialogue where it feels real between these characters, where I feel like I could be sitting there and having this conversation with them. It doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel flat. It feels like it jumps off the page, and it makes these characters who are flat on the page have that three-dimensional feel to them. They feel like they're living, breathing people. That's cool. I loved every bit of those moments.
Yeah, well, just the way she asked. Would you very much like to go with me on a very possibly suicidal and ill-defined mission that may not only save my partners, but may in fact lead to nothing but a horrible death in unmarked graves for us all?
When they're driving off together after that on the bike, our first date. And there's just, again, just the shut up nerd bit. Just, it's natural. It's fun. I'm with you in how bittersweet this issue was, because I loved every minute of it, but I was sitting here saying to myself, I'm saying goodbye to Creote. And I do want to say one thing before we go any further. The reason why I chose to do this issue is because it was Gail Simone's last issue on this book. I'm sure you and I are probably going to talk about the Mark Andreyko 2 issues when that series is wrapped up this month. The Mark Andreyko first issue was very good. I'm not taking anything away from Mark Andreyko. But a lot of the character development that's led to this really is based on the run of Gail Simone, which is why we're doing this right now. Because this has been easily my all-time favorite book. I tossed around between this and Secret Six, and there's something about the birds that I just keep getting drawn back to. And when I see Creote here, and, Savant and that whole situation, and the rationalization that these two guys, with all of their quirks and issues, I mean, Savant in particular, Savant's been a villain in this particular run. Yet, now we got Creote serving her tea and food and stuff like that. It's such a nutty world that they live in, yet it felt right. Him sitting there right now with her feels so natural to me. The fact that he would say, we can go and help them if you need us to. And her saying, no, this is a squad. I've got some other ideas for you guys. I love every bit of that stuff because that is, to me, what the Birds of Prey is all about. It is never just about one person. It's always been about the whole team, with Oracle organizing that. Being, this is to me what a team leader is all about. It's actually, she's like their, I'm overgeneralizing here, she's kind of like their Professor X, with, one of the other two being the team leaders in there. At its best. I mean, that's the stuff I liked when I was reading X-Men, was feeling like this is a strong, confident leader that you just follow. She's got all the information. She's got all the resources. It's something I always liked about Xavier. Xavier was in the wheelchair. There was something kind of cool about how all that worked. And this does take me back. And, it's funny, I never made that connection to this series. You think I would have with her being in the wheelchair, but that was never a connection for me until this moment where I was thinking about it. I'm like, wow, that is really cool. It's kind of what I've always liked about that series as well, because each of the characters kind of stood out to me as being fresh, unique, and exciting. And, Siobhan and Creote to me are two very important core members of this team.
One of the things I always like doing, and throughout the entire run I've enjoyed doing this, when you get those moments where Barbara just has that flash of inspiration, and she's like, no, I got something else idea. I always like trying to figure out what it is, she's got planned, what is going to be the little swerve, what's going to be the second piece of it. And I got to tell you, I'm usually off because I don't, it comes, and I love that surprise. And I'd say part of like one of the things where I like reading a good mystery, laid out, and a good just whodunit type of story, just these extra stuff where, the characters, so maybe you could think like them, and sometimes I'm able to figure out what she's got planned. Sometimes like, oh, that's cool, why did I think of that? And same thing with just, when you're talking that little dialogue and just that little banter she had going back and forth, I'm like, okay, what are they going? Who's she going with? And I'm trying to figure out, piece some stuff together. And that was for me part of just like a little side enjoyment that I get with the birds, especially with Oracle, where she's the thinker, the planner, the lay it out, and try to figure out where her mind is going.
I want to comment on the color work and lettering. I don't know who is responsible for this. We saw the internal dialogue of three critical characters: Huntress, Oracle, and Black Canary. And it was something that I really enjoyed the way it was set apart. There was a color scheme for each one. That there was like the purple for Dinah, there was the green for Oracle, and there was black for Black Canary. And I really liked, there was something about getting into their head. I'm a fan of that with characters. It's something, when we go back to stories like R.I.P. taking a different kind of thing. I enjoyed in R.I.P. a lot of times getting into Bruce Wayne's head and kind of traveling along with him on that. It doesn't always, with Batman, there's different types of storytelling you do with Batman. You kind of, got to make decisions on that. With this book in particular, though, it's something I've always enjoyed was the opportunities we have from time to time to really ride along with these characters and get to know them. Not just the things they're saying to others, but the things that they're thinking. You're like, we're coming for you, Dinah. Hang on. And then, to Oracle saying, good Lord, he's quiet. It's those little tiny things that you wouldn't necessarily voice to somebody else, but tell us a lot about your mood, the tension. They add drama. Like that moment with Huntress where she's saying, we're coming for you, Dinah, hang on. It added a sense of immediacy, a sense of urgency to that scene. Small little box, critical to the whole art sequence there because it added to me a sense of motion to what you got. Two people on a motorcycle. That dialogue takes that sequence and adds motion to it, adds urgency. I love that stuff.
Amen. And let's actually give credit. Diego Olmos is the artist, Nai Rufino is colorist, and Carlos Manguera, Mangual, is the letterer. Let's give full credit to the art team, even though I am butchering names, and I apologize for that.
I was just going to say that, and I'm not picking on you on this one because I am terrible with it. I do it all the time. On this show, I don't know if we're giving credit to people or harassing them when we do that. But we do mean it in a way that we really care about the work that you're doing.
It's funny, as you're talking colors, I do just have to say just how much I loved the sequences because they're going from the fight with Junior where it was all shadowy type of, but it still didn't take away. It wasn't like you can tell it's dark, you can tell it's shadowy, but we didn't lose any of the cool details in the face or any of the cool action sequences to overcast shadowing. Then you go right back to brightly colored with Lady Blackhawk. Then you're going with Huntress and Question outside at night. It's just multiple areas, multiple different color schematics, and just different tints, but it was still just really awesome artwork where you still get to see stuff and you get to enjoy the beauty of it. So this was a wonderful balancing of the art team. And again, just, it's funny as, these years have gone by, I've learned to just appreciate just the other, because as a kid, I only focused really on the writer, and then I started looking. Oh yeah, okay, and maybe I'd remember an artist's name, but I never really looked at like the colors, never really looked at the letters' names, and I've gotten a definite, completely different now, where I have a really appreciation for the art behind it. And this was just another prime example of some just beautiful comic book art that I just really sit there and even you can just look at it and enjoy the action sequences playing out. Even if you ignored the words, you could still get a great tale.
It's funny. I hearken it a lot of times to the way I look at film. I'm a big cinema fan. I love movies. I love seeing them on the big screen. I love seeing them at home. Anywhere drive-ins. Anywhere I can get my hands on seeing movies, I love it because I love the story. This is what this is all about. But a lot of times, I'll pay attention to the actors and actresses that are involved. The director. I don't know a lot of the other people involved. I don't know, the people behind the camera. I don't know any of that. And they're all part of the process. But yet I appreciate the film and I appreciate the work that they do. And that happens a lot of times with comics. There's a lot of unsung heroes who are involved with comics that over the years, I haven't realized that, wow, they were really critical to my experience. It's something I'm trying to learn more of. It's like, what are specific things that kind of set the tone for me? What are specific things that, draw me into a particular sequence of events? But it's an amazing how when you get a team effort like this series has been, you get something really special. The action sequences, to me, have been critical to Birds of Prey. When you see combat, and this sense of, we've seen Black Canary overcome incredible odds before with her fighting and combat ability and her canary cry. We've seen that she is a veteran. She's every bit up there as, your Batman, your Wonder Woman, things like that, being able to fight and hold her own and overcome incredible, impossible odds. This is no exception in this sequence of events, and Junior since Junior was created in Secret Six, this has been a villain that just has been absolutely one of my favorite. Because Junior is creepy. Creepy on so many levels because Junior's motivations are deviant. They're not your traditional motivations. So, like, when Junior fights, Junior isn't looking to kill all the time. And I loved how Dinah Lance was analyzing Junior and saying, hey, wait a minute. Looking to go after my eyes, looking at go after groin, looking to go after, just these areas to really disfigure, even more so than to kill. It's maiming and disfiguring that this person's all about. And it really is, that's an intimidation factor, too, for Junior. But it's a deviant thirst as well. And there's something about that, it's the villain mentality. There's a creepy factor. I love movies like Silence of the Lambs, for example. And one of the things that works about that movie is it's a creepy movie. I like horror movies because, they're creepy. Hitchcock, we've referenced that on the show many times. There's a creep factor there. But when you get into movies like Silence of the Lambs and stuff like that, and you get that kind of creepiness to it, it's icky. And you want to see that villain beaten, but in the end, you're still kind of like, even when that villain's beaten, you're still kind of just uncomfortable. This is Junior. You never quite feel comfortable at the end of a Junior story.
Yeah, I'd say Silence of the Lamb is a good comparison because, Hopkins and Junior, I can see a definite correlation of same type of, while Hannibal Lecter, was more of a he was I think I'd say he's probably smarter than Junior, but they both have that same kind of, style to them where you can't really predict what they're going to do. Junior I put more as crazy. Lecter I put more as psychopath. So there's similar grounds, but there's little deviations. It's kind of like an evil version of Hannibal Lecter is Junior.
Well, not even just that. To take it one step further, also the one who was, holding the girl in the pit and, the basket. There's Junior's got that level too. So there was multiple things I was thinking of when I was thinking with the Silence of the Lambs reference. But to me, I love that in this issue, so much of that, fighting style that we love to see with Black Canary was brought into play. Dove, who we know is a heavy hitter, was having trouble with Junior. Says a lot about Junior and the way, Junior has really honed herself in her own way and why she's so intimidating. But I love Oracle's frustration. This is somebody who's completely off the grid, doesn't use computers, doesn't use technology, is not visible, does not want to be, quote unquote, exposed. And I loved when that was figured out. She was talking to Thomas Blake, a.k.a. Catman. Catman's like saying, basically doesn't want to help Oracle. knows, why do I want to help you? I don't even necessarily like you. It's considering who I am. What is the motivation for here? Again, reminding us that, Catman's a villain. He's part of the Secret Six. This is not a good guy. In that book, we tend to follow him and cheer for him and want to high-five him like he's a hero. But this is a good reminder that, wait a minute, no, there is a separation here. And I love that, I love that sense of, wait a minute, I'm seeing my one of my other favorite teams from a very different perspective, seeing Oracle talking to him, slapping me in the face, reminding me, wait a minute, this is not, but yet he does have feelings. He does care for someone. When he hears that Huntress is in trouble, he offers, to start helping out. But the real issue is, how do you help out with Junior? There is no, weak spot or anything. It's something that Oracle had to figure out. You talked about it earlier. I love seeing when that light bulb goes out with Oracle. Goes on, I should say, with Oracle. When she goes, whoa, and you get to see, what is she going to do next? How is she going to, from a distance, expose Junior? I love that.
Yeah, it's funny because as you're talking, I'm sitting there, once again, just rereading, just looking at this action sequence, and something that really is kind of impressing me in this series was Dove, how she kept going, and she wasn't just laying down. Yeah, she lost a lot of blood. She was fainting in and out of consciousness, but it was that whole hero mindset where she's like, I got to keep coming back. I can't give up. You're kind of my inspiration. And just those kind of cool moments between her and Dinah, while they're fighting off, Junior. I thought it was just weird. I'm listening to you talk going, yeah. And then as I'm doing that, I'm watching this. I'm just like, dang, this is just in the middle of a fight sequence. We're getting cool story development. I'm impressed.
And the funny part is, I like seeing a character like Dove, who is a veteran, but Dinah's been in the game longer than her. And for her to admit to Dinah Lance, hey, you're an inspiration to me. You're one of the reasons why I kept going. And to see her take, we've seen Dinah overcome great odds like this. We've, seen her going back to early part in Gail Simone's run when Savant broke her legs and she had to find a way to get past all that. That type of stuff was just... watching that whole sequence of events was, it's great to see things kind of come full circle. Savant put her through some serious torture. And I loved seeing this kind of come back into play again with these characters. Because she would be an inspiration to someone like Dove. This actually got me excited for the Hawk and Dove series, that's coming up. Because seeing in this event.
Yeah, I like seeing, again, even... we didn't get a lot of Hawk in this issue. We got maybe 2 pages, but even that was a nice, usage of him. With him dealing with the bad guy. The bad guys are I don't know the minions, but they seem like more than a step up of minions. So I don't want to just call them minions, but I didn't consider them as full villain, evil, henchmen plus kind of character.
Oh, wait, dude, hang on. They were told to kill the receptionist as well as the witness, and They said, you're the best boss I've ever had. I want you to know that. I think we can say they're evil.
Oh, no, I'm not saying they're not evil. I'm going to go with bad guys, but just it's the level of bad guys is where I'm trying to figure out the 3 of them played out, because they were a step above henchmen, but I didn't put them on equal footing as, say, Junior or someone like they weren't bosses, but they weren't just minions. As just the characters had a level beyond just the grunts following orders. They actually were thinking. They were given just open-ended tasks. And they were given freedom on how to handle it. I thought that was kind of neat seeing villains. Like the helicopter pilot and that gunner who tried to kill Huntress and Question on the rooftop. That was just plain old everyday henchmen. Nothing big, nothing fancy with them.
Right.
The others were a step up.
Absolutely. Well, him especially, with him on the phone and the playoff he was having with Lady Blackhawk, I thought was really impressive. And seeing how she dealt with that. And also, it's kudos to Oracle for the plan. Because you've got really your drivers in a place where realizing if gunplay happens, who's invulnerable? Hawk. Have him in the position where he can actually take action if need be, and he's not going to get hurt. And put Lady Blackhawk, who can handle herself, proven that she's somebody who can go in covert, deal one-on-one with these guys. If they push, she can push back. She's one of the characters that, to me, It used to be before I would think of Birds of Prey, I would think of as Oracle, Huntress, and Black Canary. Lady Blackhawk is, to me, that fourth top-tier member of the team. And I'm not taking anything away from Hawk and Dove or Savant and Creode, but they aren't, like, Hawk and Dove are newer to the team. They like, I agree with you, Dove's stepped up in there. It's funny, if the run had continued, I think we would have seen both of those members where we'd see Hawk and Dove in a place where, the same place I'm saying these other characters are.
Yeah.
But to me, Lady Blackhawk, we've seen her, especially when she went to recruit, like Dove, in that sequence. Remember when they went in the bar and she was in there covert? We've seen her just take on these roles as being the first contact, of being, that every person, because she has just kind of that ability, that natural charisma. And there's something I really like about her. And she's somebody that I'm hoping we do see more of in the new DCU. Or, I use that I got to use that loosely, because it's the new old, reboot, relaunch, whatever you want to call this thing. I don't even know. But that's a character. There's certain characters who I'm really right now saying, I'm hoping they appear somewhere. And Lady Blackhawk is incredibly important to me as well. Actually, echoing what I said about Huntress earlier, I want to see Lady Blackhawk somewhere.
Now, would you want to see her in the Blackhawk series, or see her in like a Birds kind of series, or in a Huntress type of setup, or how would you want to see Lady Blackhawk?
I don't care. And let me clarify that. I want to see her with a writer who understands her and utilizes her properly. And there's a lot of ways to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I don't think these characters necessarily are stuck together. I mean, do I love would be my ideal for this? My ideal would be to see this Birds of Prey team continuing on together. Okay, that's what I want right now. But that doesn't mean that other creators can't take what was done here and what's established foundation-wise with these characters and use them elsewhere and make me just as satisfied about the characters. The trick is, you've got to make me feel like they understand who the character is. So I don't want to have a Lady Blackhawk where I'm like, well, that's not Lady Blackhawk, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And in a way, for me, I kind of would like to see her away from, the other Blackhawks, because she's just, I think, for me, she's a cooler character when she's, the Blackhawk with this other team.
But we haven't read her, though, as a Blackhawk.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. But, you get the right writer, you see where it goes, and, I don't know. I'm in agreement with you that I want to see her, and I want to see this style of character with her. Just the character that I know to be Lady Blackhawk, that's who I want to see.
It's ideally, I'm hoping that there will be some recognition these characters know each other. And I don't know if that's going to be possible, because we don't know what is Birds going to look like after this. I don't know what that series is. And that's not a negative on it. I have to read the first issue to understand, how connected is it going to be to this, or is it going to be something new? There's reasons why I'm kind of leaning one way or the other on it. I don't know if this is going to be like a Teen Titans style reboot, or if it's going to be something more like we're seeing with some of the other series where certain parts of their continuity are still going to be in place. So we'll have to wait and see what happens when that series launches. And the same thing with the Blackhawks. If she's part of the Blackhawks, is there going to be any reference to the current continuity, or is that going to be a full reboot? And again, if they do fully reboot her, okay, that's fine, as long as she feels like this character. This to me is a template for what this character should be. So I think this is an identifiable template for what I would see for a Lady Black. Same thing with Huntress. I think this is a template for what I want to see from Huntress. Anything else about this book that you want to mention, Jim?
Well, just, cool moment, just that final panel where you're talking about with Junior, and just I'd love seeing just Oracle sitting there just like, she hurt my girls, and if it takes forever, she's going to pay for that. Who's in? I like just how that goes, and I'm hoping that this is where it kind of feeds off of, the next series does keep this going, and maybe this is kind of an area where it gets Barbara out of the chair and gets her to be in Batgirl. And I'm wondering, because they could, whenever I get to like an end of a series or an end of a run or an end of concept, I always think, can this continue on in the new universe reboot? Can they take this forward? And I'd like that, I'd like to see it continue on, because that would mean Junior would be in the, continue coming back, and Junior's a great villain. But also, if, Barbara's going after Junior, that'll mean Junior's in the Bat titles and the Batgirl title, and I think that would be kind of a cool, thing to see.
Well, here's the thing, though. See, like, Barbara's supposed to be younger in the new relaunch, so I don't know. I'm really curious to see if her history with birds is in place. We know she will have been at least in the chair for some point in time. Will she have been Oracle? If she will have been Oracle, because I don't know. Did they say she was Oracle or that she was in the chair? That's the part I forget. So I'm not going to even pretend like I know one way or another for sure. And I'm curious to read in September because I think that's the way to see what's actually going on with her anyway. But we're going to see her get out of the chair and be Batgirl again. If this continuity with Junior never happened, that doesn't mean we can't have Junior. We could just have Junior launched into all this.
Oh, definitely. Junior's not necessarily gone. Junior's a great villain, so I'm sure we'll see him again.
Yeah, so I mean that's a character that easily we could have back. Honestly, it would be a crying shame if we don't see Junior again at some point. Terrific. This is honestly, I've teeter-tottered month in, month out between this and Secret Six as far as which is my favorite book. When I'm thinking about and talking about birds, it's birds. When I'm thinking about and talking about the Six, it's Secret Six. I wanted to talk about this issue in particular, though, because I just wanted to do a send-off to a run that I've enjoyed not just for these 13 issues, but in the previous run. There's something about the way Gail Simone has written these characters that I think, I grew up watching the 60s Batman show. The Barbara Gordon Batgirl has been one of those characters that, not just from those appearances, but then into the animated series. And I'm talking about the Filmation animated series. Then straight on through to later animated appearances from the character. It's a character who every time she's appeared, whether it's in comics or it's in media, I've really enjoyed the character. And she's very important to me. When Killing Joke happened, and we saw that character not be diminished by Killing Joke, but take herself and fight her way back to being something in the DC Universe and a powerful force. Whether she's in the chair or out of the chair, the inspiration right there is she didn't let that crucial, horrible event stop her. That's one of the inspirations of her when she's in the wheelchair as Oracle. It was that event could have broken her down. We see a strength of character. And that's an important part of comics. It's seeing that no matter how tough times get, you find the strength of character to carry on. You find that way to suck it up. Even if you keep further down the path and it takes you a while to get to that point, there's got to be that point where you stop and say, hey, wait a minute. I'm more than this. I can do more than this. And no matter how I've got to claw and dig my way back, I will find a way to do that. Whether you become somebody else when you do that or you find your way back to your original role, there's something cool about that. And that's why continuity on any level is important. Even if it changes over time, where you take certain things out because you're making the character younger or something like that, certain pivotal events in somebody's life, knowing that they've happened and seeing how they've progressed since then adds a sense of motivation to them, and adds a sense of, wow, could I do that? Because we always talk about it on the show at times. There's certain characters we look at and go, wait a minute, I don't know if I could do that. Oracle's one of those characters. She never ceases to amaze me. And I'm thrilled with the run that we had here. And this is a great ending to this run.
Hey, Sean and Jim, it's Mark Zebra from the Comic Forums. I was just calling in real quick with just sort of a thought on Teen Titans 98 and also on Superboy. And it's sort of in regards to the new 52. Been a fan of Teen Titans and Superboy. And I was just wondering, Teen Titans has just introduced the character Solstice. And with the relaunch coming, I'm just sort of wondering if when they were planning the relaunch, if they were planning on maybe using her somewhere else or what. Not to spoil anything in it, but just the sort of conflict between Raven and Solstice is very interesting, and it seems like with the relaunch, that story that was just beginning is sort of going to be dropped. And just in Superboy also with the new characters they've introduced, at least they're new to me, but Simon Valentine and what was the guy from the future, I can't remember his name right now, but the psychic guy from the future. It's just sort of interesting that they would be sort of introducing and developing these new characters in the last few runs. And I'm just wondering if you think we might see them again, or just sort of how that worked out with the planning of the launch of the new 52, if you've heard anything. But really enjoying those books. Looking forward to just what's to come in comics. There's a lot of exciting things happening right now. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Now, the character of Solstice was created by J.T. Krull and Nicola Scott for their run.
Right.
So I'm guessing... Well, I shouldn't say that. It's a character that I'm sure is open to any writer to use, but with them relaunching the Teen Titans, doing like kind of a Teen Titans reboot, this is the first time these characters have met, Solstice is certainly not going to show up as a member of the Teen Titans in the sense that they've already known her. I don't know that they have plans to use her in that series, because right now I think we've seen the starting lineup. I know there's going to be more characters, I'm sure, in Teen Titans as the series goes on, maybe even in the first issue. I don't know if Solstice is going to be the one or if they're going to create their own. That doesn't mean that Solstice as a character, kind of like what we said earlier when we were talking about Junior.
Yeah.
Just because these characters, maybe some of the events might not have happened to them, doesn't mean those characters can't appear. It's like Barbara Gordon's going to be Batgirl again. That even though the later events might not have all happened to her, that's still that character. That's still Barbara Gordon we're going to be reading about. I think these other characters, it's going to be the same thing. If there's a writer who has a use for the character, those characters are on the table to be used. I like Solstice, so that's a character who I would like to see. Here's the other thing. We don't know, between the next two issues, what her fate is.
Yeah. I would think that, she's not going to be in there, but I think they could pull her in a future story and just reintroduce her again. She's a cool character, and I can't see them dropping her and getting rid of her completely. But it's one of those things where we won't know until it actually happens where things go.
What would be interesting to see is, if they don't use her there, will J.T. Krull use her somewhere? I don't know. That'll be... I don't know in his current books if there's a spot for her. I don't see her being there. But that doesn't mean the character can't appear in the future. Not every character has to appear in September.
Right.
There's a lot of characters that can always appear later on. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. I like her too, though. I agree. What about the Superboy character? I'm guessing a lot of the characters I'm guessing. I think we know with what's going on with Superboy that a lot of those characters are not going to be appearing.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting any of those guys, and I agree with them. I like that. And that was one of the things I was really digging about Superboy was the Team Superboy angle, and just I wanted to see where that was going to play out. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is Superboy having his own support unit. That's not the Teen Titans. That's not Tim. That's not Clark. It's his own people, and I thought that was cool to see that happen. But again, those are also characters that he's going to have an ongoing, so they can always reintroduce those characters in that way, and maybe we'll see something different out of them.
Except for Ma Kent.
Well, yeah, except for Ma Kent.
So that's why I'm wondering what his book's going to look like, because we've seen him at the Kent farm living there with Ma Kent. Now, I'm pretty sure from everything the Kents are out of the equation, right?
It sounds like both Kents are dead.
Right. So we'll see what happens. So that will affect Superboy in some way. There are certain characters he has, though, that could stick around, though, so we'll see what happens with that. Like, I'm with you. Some characters could be reintroduced, or, we don't know what's really going on with Superboy, much less his supporting cast. I'm very curious about that, though, because I'm digging Superboy's current book, so I'm curious to see how, Superman's changing status quo obviously affects Superboy. So how is that going to affect him, and what's that going to look like? We'll have to wait and see.
Hi, guys. This is Nadia from the forums. First, Sensei, please answer your threat. I posted my question from 15 July and I'm still waiting for an answer. Second, I'm sick of all the diversity fans. We want more black, more gays, more lesbians, more this in the comics or movies or TV series. Come on, just enjoy what you're watching and reading. I'm Arabic. I don't see me complain. I need more Arab characters in comics. Please, you don't see me complain about that.
Well, see, this is interesting. I kind of understand what he's saying as far as, do we have to force having certain types of characters in comics? I don't think that works, but I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think these books that are being created are forcing certain types of characters into comics. I think these are concepts and ideas that are well thought out, that they're interesting. I think characters are chosen because they're interesting and because they do make the universe diverse. But see, here's the problem with diversity. A lot of times I think we're getting hung up on the diversity in comics being just about race and background and gender of the characters. I don't think that's all they're doing here. When you got books like Sergeant Rock being relaunched, they're going for a different, in some of the dark books, for example, like Justice League Dark, the magical books, and Swamp Thing. These are titles.
Demon Knight.
Yeah, these are titles who are very unique and different from other books that we've seen. So if you look at the Weekly Firestorm coming back, so yes, there is gender, race, sexual preference, diversity in DC Comics, but some of these characters already had that in place, like Batwoman. Yeah, there's diversity there with her, but that's stuff that's already been established. That was part of her character right from the get-go. So, and a lot of these characters, they aren't, like, some of them aren't new characters. They're characters that are getting solo series now, but they aren't like just creating characters for the sake of, making them diverse across the board because, Mr. Terrific, Firestorm, just a great example of characters that were already diverse. Blue Beetle, those are characters that were already there. So these, it's not, I don't think, I understand his point to a certain extent because I'm not a fan of, we shouldn't force, let's make a book with this type of character. The problem with that, and let me clarify that, the problem with that is then you're not going to get a very strong character. You're getting a character that's just being created because of their background or preference, and you're not going to get a strong, driven story from that because there's no drive for the creators to create the type of character. Why are Superman and Batman still around? Because when they were created, the character, like for example, Superman, Siegel and Schuster, why they create that character? There's a lot of drive and passion to create that character. Batman, a lot of drive and passion to create that character. It wasn't we need to have this character there. You know what I mean? It was, they were at the ground floor, the cutting edge, creating something new and different. That was really the purpose of creating those characters. So I think characters that, if we want longevity, if we want those characters to stick around, you can't just say, we need this type of character and put them there. John Stewart, why is he a longtime favorite? Because a lot of creators have had a passion for creating really good stories with him. And we think back to those stories and we have a fondness for that character, because of who he is. It's not, he just happens to be a black man, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Which is what I like about him. It's not, I think that's, how do we make diverse characters stick around? For them to be just as human and comfortable as any other person is, not forced on it. So I get what he's saying to a certain extent. I don't get that vibe with these 52, though. I really don't. I think when you hear conventions and you hear people getting up to the mic and saying stuff like that and complaining, I don't think they're looking at the lineup the right way. Is there room for more diversity in comics and for richer characters and for comics to more accurately reflect what the real world's like? Sure. I think, they can always do that more. But I never think that should be a forced thing. I think that should be something that happens organically. I don't think it's wrong for people asking for it, though. Because I think comic companies need to know that people want that. Writers need to know that. Because then, what ends up happening? And a writer keeps that in the back of their head. And they may on their own go there because that's something you sparked in them. Then there's passion behind it. So I think fans have the right to speak their mind on that stuff. I think that it should be done a lot more respectfully than it's sometimes done. I think sometimes when you do something with respect and you explain yourself with a lot of passion, I think you get a lot further. People listen more. And it will then tend to sink in on creators versus a wall being put up, if that makes sense. I honestly feel like the 52 that's coming up, I don't feel like there's any forced diversity there. Do any of those titles feel forced to you, Jim, where it's like, no, that's just some kind of token title that's thrown in there?
And I think the reason I don't think it feels forced to me is because the Pledge for Diversity has something they've been going, that DC has been doing this over the long haul.
Yeah.
And when they first started saying, like, hey, we hear you. We see at the cons. We see who's coming and who's buying our books. And we understand that you want to pick up a book and you want to see people that look like you, people who are in your same type of situation, your same type of somebody that you can directly relate to. We get that. But we're not just going to throw something at you. We need to build this over time so they stick around for the long haul. And it was, you mentioned, with Blue Beetle, that's, I think, a great example of how they did foul with with completely switching around who Blue Beetle was, but it wasn't just, hey, we need a Latino Blue Beetle now, boom. No, there's the story behind it. You get to know Jaime. You get to know, hey, he's a cool character. He's a fun hero. I can relate to him because I can remember when I was a kid going through high school, going through all the teen angst stuff, and here's this kid going through the exact same thing. Oh, he also happens to have an alien scarab, fused to his back. Oh, okay, yeah, this is, somebody that I can connect to. And there's, just other personal connections. And I think, the way they're going about the diversity is a great way to do it, where we're getting this cool stories being told with changing around the scenery. You need to mix things up a little bit to make it more reflective of society. And I think that's great. I'm really looking forward to seeing different stuff come out, see where, and how they play off. You mentioned Batwoman. I absolutely love the character. Yep. And I loved her story and why she became Batwoman. She has this strong desire to serve her country. She has this desire to do what's right, and she couldn't, because of the fact that she is gay. She couldn't be in the military. And this is, and when we first introduced the character, when they first went through her backstory and her history, I gushed about just how that just so fits so perfectly with the military mindset, with what she went through, how she had that period where, she was just feeling absolutely like garbage. And then, just that one chance dealings like, wait a minute. I can do this. I can still make a difference. And that, that soldier in her, that fighter, that never say die, hoorah, honor, came back out. And she's like, no, this is what I'm going to do. This is who I am. And I love just how that all played out and just, really, kind of locked me into her and understanding and accepting to her. I don't see her as a gay superhero. I see her as Batwoman, as a really cool character who happens to be gay. Right. And it's, that kind of diversity is just, for me, is just a great way to play it out and a great way to see it. I really, I'm curious, excited to see different stories being told from different points of view and just where we're going to go with it. One of the things I do wonder about, and it's kind of interesting, for me is, when we're talking like, diversity, and I love how you mentioned that it's not just diversity of the physical stuff, it's diversity of the story. It's different style storying. And I completely agree with that. But I wonder if when we get into the new universe, if we're going to have, different types of endings. Because you think about it, in the end, when you're reading a comic book, usually the heroes are going to come out on top. There's sometimes when it's, kind of like a halfway win. But I'm wondering if we're going to see a little bit more of where villains come out on top, or, the hero doesn't completely save the day. There's going to be, some disaster that happens, and they save like some of the people, but they still had more death in there. And I wonder if we're going to see that type of diversity in storytelling where it's not always a happy ending.
I mean, we've seen some of that before. You're saying more. You're saying more of it. I know what you're getting at.
You think about the Cry for Justice story. That had a lot of outrage because a little girl died in it. But you also look at just the massive body count of innocent civilians who died in the story of Cry for Justice. That was a special story that was coming out, playing right into the what was going to be the new Justice League, and that nice kind of lead in there. I'm wondering if we're going to get stories like that where you're kind of like going, whoa, I didn't see that one coming. If that kind of diversity is going to happen. Yeah,
I don't know. I'm really anxious to see what's going to come of all this. What kind of story. I think naturally when you're doing a title like, as different as like Grifter, for example, or OMAC, you're going to get different kinds of storytelling in there. And that's up to the creators to develop that kind of storytelling. We talked about Thunder Agents on this, or we're going to talk about, I should say, Thunder Agents on this episode. And there's a book that I think is very diverse in its storytelling. It's very unique. There's one thing with diversity I think people are forgetting, and this isn't just across DC Comics in general, have been, launching diverse characters, I think, a lot. Like in 2006, I got my first convention sketch ever. It was from Jamal Ligle. It was Jason Rush, Firestorm. I loved that book. You don't think I'm sure they sit in writers' meetings and will sit there and go, I'm sure this probably comes up from time to time, and I'm guessing on this, so please don't quote me. I'm not like sitting in DC writing meetings, but I'm sure that it'll come up in discussions like, okay, we're looking to launch some new characters. We'd like some diversity in comics. We have some ideas here. Which ones of these have legs? Who has story ideas for these characters? Does this character have a story? So, I mean, is there a certain part where they sit there and say, hey, we'd like to make the universe more diverse? What about this idea? What about that idea? Here's some concept ideas that we have. Does anybody have anywhere to go with this? And to me, believe me, if these series are launching in September, it's because the writers that are attached to it have pitches and story ideas in place for these characters. That's why they're there. Is there a direct intention for some of them to be there because they're diverse titles? Absolutely. I'm sure there was more. I mean, wait, not I'm sure. It's silly not to think there weren't more than 52 ideas on the table for potential titles. Because they even announced that at the panels, that there were some ideas that got scrapped and other ideas that were put to the forefront. And the reason why they do stuff like that is because one pitch sounds better than the other. One pitch might be, that interesting, diverse title that they think might have legs. Believe me, they're putting these books out because they think they have the potential to gain an audience. So they aren't just throwing that character out there saying, hey, it's this type of character. Let's get them out there. It's this type of character, but they have a story. There's an interesting direction for that character. There's a hook that they feel like might draw in a universal fan. So, I mean, that's something that's there. And I think that's a key. Micah Griffin, when he and I had a big discussion about diversity, one of the things he said he was concerned about was, we don't want these characters to be token characters. And I get what he was saying there. What he's saying is he wants characters that have some legs to them, that have a direction to go in. That's why when I'm looking at the blurbs for these characters, especially now that we're starting to see solicitations for issue 3 in a lot of these books, you're starting to see that, okay, these characters have directions. They have supporting casts. Batwing, for example. You're starting to see that Batwing's, it's not just going to be Batwing in that book. There's more to that book. There's supporting cast that's being developed in there. That's what I mean. It's not just diversity. It's, for the sake of being diverse, it's unique story ideas that have a direction. That kind of diversity. So, I'm like, for a Jason Rush fan like myself and a Ronnie Raymond fan, I'm thrilled that we're going to be getting those characters in the 52, because I think those are characters that have a story to be told. They've been, already been telling them in Brightest Day, but I liked their stories before then. I'm a Firestorm fan, and the fact that Firestorm's going to have an evolution to it, and I mean, you can't look at the Fury of Firestorm, see the artwork that we've seen from it already, and not recognize that, wow, Ethan Van Sciver and Gail Simone are looking to turn Firestorm on its head, and really just for anybody that's been a longtime fan or a new fan of Firestorm, there's going to be a new direction for this character, a new story with this character that's going to honor the character's past, sure, but it's also going to take us in a new place where we're all going to go, wow. And that's the whole point of the diversity, is to get people excited. I don't think it's a lot of the token stuff. I think you do hear people at conventions shouting out at all that, and there's nothing wrong with that. You got to understand, fans have a right to vocalize that stuff. My only caution to fans, and I'll say this again, vocalize a little more, in some cases, vocalize a little bit more respectfully. Sometimes I am, embarrassed as a comic fan of the people that get up on the mic at conventions and represent us. Not because of what they're asking. Never that. It's how you ask, I think that there's a respectful way to ask just about anything, whether you like something or dislike it. I think you can go up to the mic and say you don't like something in a way that's respectful, and sometimes I think comic fans embarrass us in the way they present themselves. So that's my only issue when people ask for things or comment on things. Never what they're asking for, it's how they ask. And for God's sakes, if you're going to mention something about a comic book, whether you're critiquing it or not, please be reading the book and know what you're talking about. Do not go up with an ignorant question that clearly shows you're not even reading the title you're complaining about. That's a little editorial aside and all that. But I don't know. I'm into the whole diversity thing. So I hope we got all of. I couldn't make out what Dick Grayson was saying in the beginning of his message, but the last part, I'm hoping we got your points about diversity. Dick, if we missed something, it's Dick Grayson 99 from the forums. If we missed something that you were asking for in your call, please let me know, and I'll make sure to, we'll talk about it on another show. It's a good question. I think the diversity thing is always an interesting topic to me because I love diverse titles. To me, the more diverse and you and I always use the term palate cleansers, and I think we're almost too general with it now when we use it. But it's really to me become my titles that are just a little different than the normal superhero genre that we read. Titles that try to take us in a little bit of a different direction, do something a little different. They fit a different category. My television watching is so broad in the type of shows from drama to sci-fi to comedies. I like to watch, till we talk about wrestling and stuff like that. I like to watch all kinds of different stuff. And my film tastes are the same way. So my comic tastes match all of that. I want to see more in diversity in comics of storytelling. And characters will sometimes lend to that, but also story concepts and directions will also lead to that. So that's kind of what diversity is to me in comics. It's not just gender and race and preference. There's more to it. And I want to see all of those things, including gender, race, and preference. I think it's good for all of us.
Hey, Sean and Jim, it's Greg Shanky again, calling for the third week in a row, much to my surprise. I just got through listening to episode 265, and you were talking about Captain Thunder. What I don't know that anyone mentioned afterwards, on episode 265, was that Captain Thunder was 6 individuals, was the original concept for Captain Marvel, as created by, submitted by Bill Parker, I believe his name was, to Fawcett Comics back in 1938, I believe. But then the editor said, you know what, let's just take, instead of 6 individuals, make it 1 individual, and then say that word, and they become Captain Thunder. Then, of course, Captain Thunder was a name already in use, and he was suggested to be Captain Marvelous, and then that was shortened to Captain Marvel. So, with the 6 individuals you're seeing right now in Flashpoint, that is an old concept, way back from not even printed. It's the pre-embryonic stage of Captain Marvel. Now then, you are also talking about, how the vision for Captain Marvel. Some were saying like the Captain Thunder concept. Others were saying, Captain Marvel is the way to go. And I think if you want to see, in my opinion, what the heroes are going to look like when Flashpoint ends, abstract each individual character down to a 1-sentence description. Because you remember 5 years ago, Dan DiDio, that's what he said he wanted. When they had gotten back to the Kara Zor-El version of Supergirl, he explained that we could have an angel, we can have a protoplasmic person being Supergirl, but to not push away new people, he wanted to get every character to its core, to a simple description. And in that case, a boy gets a magic word, says it, becomes Captain Marvel. And I think, thinking about that, I'm wondering if Speed Force is going to survive Flashpoint. Because that's a lot of words you got to use if you're going to describe the Flash, as opposed to police scientists got hit with lightning chemicals, became super fast. And I really, really think that's the direction, when everything is all said and done, that's going to be the VCU. Simple descriptions, the core of the character. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it might work. So if anyone's questioning just what they think the character is going to be, abstract down to the barest description of the character, the 1-sentence description, and I think that's what you'll see come Flashpoint in the new DCU come September. Okay, I stay around long enough. Love the show. Nice talking to you guys. Hope to see you next year at C2E2. Bye.
I want to start first with that reveal about Captain Thunder, because I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the original pitch, and I find that very cool that they went back to that Jeff Johns went back to the history of Captain Marvel and said, hey, we could use that cool pitch that they did in the beginning and make that work for the character as a way of showing this alternate universe version of him, like the Captain Marvel that could have been, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know going forward that. See, then I think we should transition right now into saying I understand what he's saying about them getting to the core of the character, and I agree with that, but I don't think we're going to be limited to, like, the character being stuck in their one-sentence description. Because, like, if you sit there and say, okay, who's the Flash? The Flash is Barry Allen, the fastest man alive. Well, does that mean we're not going to ever know how he became the fastest man alive? Who his parents are, what his relationship status is like? Those are all things that don't fit into that one sentence. There's more to the character than just the one sentence. What they were saying, and I was at one of the panels where this first came up, and it really was mainly focused on Supergirl. Why did they choose to go to Kara Zor-El instead of Matrix? Because Matrix was Supergirl beforehand. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is Dan DiDio said when he came into DC, he was looking at who Supergirl is, and he said it starts to get confusing when you've got these identifiable characters like Supergirl. And Supergirl's a little bit different than, like, Mr. Terrific, for example, in the sense that I think the general public, if you walk down the street and ask them, is it just Superman? I think the average person knows that there's a Supergirl. And if you were to ask them what's the relationship to Superman, I think you would get the answer cousin, sister, that there's some kind of familial relationship there, which Matrix didn't have. I don't think every person knows that Supergirl is Superman's cousin. I don't believe that. I think that it is more common knowledge than Matrix was. And that was the point that he was making when he said strip them down to who they are. What he was looking at saying, these are our identifiable properties. I think that's why is Batgirl going back to Barbara Gordon? I think because of that. They're trying to look at their commonly known properties. And when you look at that, you've got to be looking at not only to the comic storytelling, which the creators are going to take care of, that end of it. It's when you look at merchandising and costumes for Halloween and future for kids and things like that, who are the ones that everybody knows? Who are the ones that everybody quickly identifies? Who are these characters? And how do we make sure to tell interesting and unique stories with these characters, but then make it, if somebody goes to the comic shop to pick up a book with this character, they can sit there and say, hey, I want a Supergirl book. They're going to know it's Supergirl in there, is what he's saying. Not that it's like, Matrix. Wait, who's that?
Yeah.
I don't know that I always agree with him on that concept, because I think the Supergirl Matrix stories were incredibly interesting. I thought that was an incredible run. And if you look at the longevity of that run, I think it was a title that, had a fan base and a fan following. So I don't know that I 100% agree with that. But then there's that other part of me that gets the point. This is a property like Supergirl has been around forever. And I do think it's universally a character that's identified by non-comic fans. I ultimately feel the way that you're going to get people to read comics, though, is really more so that there's got to be a buzz and some reason for people who aren't reading comics to try and pick one up. I don't know that. I think when you shorten it down to the one sentence to get to the core of who the character is, I think that's why we as readers stick with the characters. Like when we talked about, like, Birds of Prey, for example. What do I love about Birds of Prey? I feel like characters like Huntress, Black Canary, Oracle, who, for me, I grew up with those characters. I loved Earth 2. But here's the thing. I don't think in this universe Huntress needs to be Bruce Wayne's daughter. I think there's more to her than that. And that's what they mean about stripping down to the core. Who is that character? When Helena puts on the costume of the Huntress, who is she? That's what they mean by stripping down to one sentence. Who is she when she puts on there? That doesn't mean that we're not going to have the Speed Force, though. Now, there's a possibility we may not have the Speed Force, but I think it's going to be for a storytelling reason, not because it doesn't fit into his sentence. And I could be wrong there, too. Greg just mentioned he could be wrong. I could be totally off base on this. I'm speculating the same way Greg is. So maybe Greg's got something and I don't. I just don't see the characters being limited to a one-sentence description. I do agree with him, though, that part of the point of this is to get them to who they are at their core. I think that's what they're trying to do with Superman. I think they're trying to get a Superman that's universally identifiable as being Superman, which... a lot of fans have been saying that they don't think that that's who Superman's been. I've been digging his books, but they're looking at sales numbers and saying, hey, Superman should be a book that people, are flocking to. And I do agree with that concept. So hopefully this they've got a solution to make Superman the it book again. And I think that's the whole point of this, getting to the core of who, like, Superman is, for an example, using, Greg's thing. I think in one sentence, tell me who Superman is, and let's build off of that. Let's start with that as the foundation, and let's build off of that. With the Flash, I think they're going to say, well, it's Barry Allen, the fastest man alive. Okay, then let's build off of that. What does that mean? And I think that's where the Speed Force then would come in, because that's part of building off of that. But the foundation piece is going to be that one sentence. So I think Greg's right on the one sentence thing, core, but you're building off of that. You're not just sticking to one sentence for the character. It'd be a very short book. I don't know if you agree with me.
Yeah, I'm just silently agreeing with you.
Okay.
Literally, dude, as you're saying,
okay.
I'm sitting there shaking my head going, yeah, I agree with you. I think, it's not limitation of one sentence. It's what's the basis? What's that founding? What's that building block? Who is and what is, these characters? And it's trying, I think like Hawkman is I think the reboot's going to really clean up Hawkman and, get him set and boom, this is who Hawkman is.
Dude, if they reboot Hawkman every time and to clean him up, he's got to be the cleanest character in comics. I really don't think. See, I agree. First of all, I agree with you. So I think that's one of the goals with Hawkman is kind of to clean him up too. But I guess I'm of the opinion he's already been cleaned up. I think we know, who is Hawkman? Like, if I ask you, Jim, honestly, right now, who do you see Hawkman as?
A bad, son of a gun who swings a mace and bashes people's heads in.
Okay, that's who he is at the core.
Yeah.
And then you build off of that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we're going to be, stuff like is he this intergalactic police? Is he connected to the Thanagarians? Is he this reincarnated? There's so many different things. I think, that's what they're talking about. They want to get to the core. Who is Hawkman? That's why it's called the Savage Hawkman, not the, detective intergalactic police Hawkman, who was also a reincarnated version of this ancient Egyptian person who is kind of a alien Thanagarian who came to Earth, back in the past.
Oh my God! I think he's so going to lived multiple lives.
Maybe they'll have the multiple lives, but I think what they're doing is they're focusing on, boom, who is Hawkman? That's where they're going. And as they expand on this story, maybe we'll get more ties.
But that's a part of him.
I don't think they're going to have all the different interweavings of the different stories. I think some of it's going to go away.
Wait, this is part of the problem. You haven't read a lot of Hawkman.
True.
The interweaving of the interweaving of the stories was just to explain his origin. If you actually read the Hawkman book, it focused on Carter and Kendra, the actual Hawkman series. It wasn't a whole interweaving. They did an issue every so often where they focused on a past life, but it wasn't like an interweaving of 20 different Hawkmen throughout the series. It was one Hawkman. It was Carter. So this series, first of all, I agree with you. I think this series is going to be about this savage Hawkman. So you're right. We're totally in sync on that. I do want to correct you, though, I've read the Hawkman series. It wasn't each series of Hawkman explained how that series, what the origin of that series was, but it wasn't a constant explanation of this side story of Hawkman or this side story of Hawkman. Those only ever came in if there was a storytelling reason for it to happen. It was not a constant part of the series, nor was it something that was a main focus of the series, other than the fact that they were reincarnated and one of their villains was chasing them throughout their lives, Hathset, when Hathset appeared. And Hathset wasn't always a part of the series in the Hawkman run. So, there was a lot more to that series than just, the fact that he lived multiple lives. But I do think, and if they take that out of it, I think that's a big mistake to take out the reincarnation, because I think that's a part of the character. That's like taking reincarnation out of Doctor Who, for example. I don't think the fact that Doctor Who has lived 9 other lives has made him made him more complicated. And each other life that Doctor Who lived was very different. But on the other hand, when Doctor Who regenerates, they don't sit there and go back and have him, every so often they might have a past companion come in, but that's not the main focus of the series. It just happens to be something cool that happens to be a quirk of the character. That's what it's been with Hawkman and the best of Hawkman storytelling. And even when he was a space cop and all that, there wasn't this big focus on, their Hawkman, because that wasn't really a part of it. So that wasn't, that's something that's fairly new to the series, that Jeff Johns tied it up into a neat bow that way. And that was really only in the JSA Return of Hawkman series that it was a main focus as a way to explain that this guy was everybody. And then you move on from there. I don't think that needs to be a focus of the current series. And I actually think you're right. So let me go back and just say, I sound like I'm contradicting you, but I'm not. I think your concept of the premise of the series is exactly what you said in your sentence. He's going to be this big, tough guy that beats things down, and I think building off of that, they're going to say, oh yeah, and he just happens to have reincarnated. He just happens to have lived multiple lives. I think that is going to be a part of it. I think the stuff that we saw in Brightest Day is not going to be canceled out by this. I think Brightest Day will have happened.
Yes.
Hey, Sean and Jim. This is Caleb from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a new listener to Raging Bullets, and that is thanks to, in large part, the DC Noise podcast. Sean co-hosted an episode with the guys a few weeks back, and I was really intrigued by his commentary, so I gave Raging Bullets a shot, and now I'm hooked. I started listening to DC podcasts on the heels of the relaunch announcement. I've been a longtime fan of DC characters, thanks to Batman the Animated Series, which I grew up on. And I started reading the comics for the first time around the theatrical release of Batman Begins back in 2005. And it was a blast. I just got a little bit expensive for a high school student with minimal income. So I switched to casual trade readership and have been there for about 3 years now. So when DC announced this new relaunch, I was probably one of the few people that was super excited because I looked at this as a way to start from the beginning and invest in a lot of characters. When I was reading monthlies, I remained limited to mainly Batman and Green Lantern titles with a few others thrown in. And when I did try to branch out, I felt kind of overwhelmed. But I'm sure DC would really be thrilled to know that this relaunch has caused me to go from reading 0 monthlies to 36, which I ordered from DCBS, by the way. So I've gone from reading pretty much Batman and Green Lantern stuff to things like Teen Titans, Stormwatch, Swamp Thing, Wonder Woman, Mr. Terrific, Birds of Prey, and a bunch of others. And I've always been fascinated by those characters, and I've really been interested in them, but now I'm really excited for reading those titles. I really can't wait for September, and I'm really excited about reading monthlies again. That being said, I'd like to credit you guys for helping me to make this commitment. So when this whole relaunch decision came out, I went to forums and started reading commentary and reaction, and I was really disappointed in the cynicism and negativity about this move. I felt like a lot of people weren't really giving DC a fair shake, and it's hard to feel sympathetic with people, as you know, when they're raving without any reasonable debate points. So I'd like to thank both of you for being really patient and willing to experience new things. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that and your enthusiasm for DC characters, but mainly just your positivity. It's very refreshing. I, like both of you, felt like the San Diego Comic-Con panels really answered a lot of questions and showed a lot of thought and careful preparation that makes this new era of DC seem really exciting and timely. Also, a big thanks for your discussion of Flashpoint. I found it really interesting, so I started going back and reading Flashpoint stuff, and it's made me that much more excited about September. So thanks again, guys. I don't think you know how invaluable of a DC podcast this is, and as long as you're podcasting and I'm reading DC, you have a devoted listener in me. So until next time, take care.
I want to give a shout-out first to DC Noise. You know, it's one of the things, and Jim will test this too, with doing a podcast is a lot of times it's us juggling when we can get together with recording, making sure we've read what we need to read for the episodes. I'm coming up with show topic ideas. Just, you know, it's a lot of preparation. Then there's the editing and putting the show out. So there's a lot of that work. It's sometimes very hard to do other podcasts. I love talking with other podcasters. DC Noise is one that, you know, I enjoy listening to when I'm not doing our show. A lot of times I'll wait to listen to their episodes if they're talking about topics that we're going to discuss, because I don't want our show to be a regurgitation of their show, if that makes sense, because I'm aware that there's listeners such as yourself who are listening to both, and probably quite a few of our audience-based members we share. And then there's going to be people who maybe they aren't finding what they're looking for in our show and they listen to DC Noise, and vice versa. And I think that's one of the nice things about having a lot of podcasts out there is, you know, there's a great library of podcasting to kind of fit into your needs. And there's people who pick and choose episodes from both of ours. So it's kind of great, and I really appreciate your support of our show. You know, it's funny. I'm of two minds as far as the whole forum things go. First of all, I love the internet. Why are we here as a podcast? Because of the internet medium. You know, it's a great way to reach people. I think we have a terrific forum community. I don't think there's anything wrong with having criticism and things like that. I think there's a certain sect of the internet, though, and certain forums and things where you look at them and it's non-stop negativity, like you said, without any discussion point. I think it's okay to have criticisms of something if you've actually read it or you've actually thought it through and you've read information, you have some background to what you're talking about. Not everybody's going to be happy about September. That's okay. It's part of the risk. Not everybody's happy about the current books they're reading. That's kind of one of the things that go on. But you got to remember, too, with forums, I know from our own podcast, not every listener we have participates in our forum, calls into the show. We have a very small, compared to our audience base, it's, tiny part of our audience base that posts in the forum and listens and, does voicemails and things like this. We appreciate that. But there's people who the majority of people just want to listen to the podcast. I think it's true with comic fans. Majority of your comic fans just read their comics. They enjoy their comics. They listen to the ones that listen to podcasts too, sometimes just want to listen to the podcast and move along. They don't, want to participate further than that. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. We appreciate that. Whatever level, do that. But I think that's true with comics creators as well. I think our positivity, it kind of fits a majority of the fans. When you're on a limited budget, if you're reading 1 or 2 books, you're usually reading those 1 or 2 books because you're enjoying them. Otherwise, you're going to drop the hobby. At least I think that way. I think that there's people who are reading like 1 or 2 books that maybe are loving book A, and book B right now might not be hitting them the way that it always has. And that might be the target audience for what's going on in September. Maybe to replace that book B with a different title. One that they're enjoying or something like that. That's where new, fresh ideas coming out can be fun. But some of these, like Greg mentioned earlier, I think some of these are going to be about getting characters to a core place that maybe they haven't been at. But then you're going to have other characters that I think like Batman and Green Lantern that have a larger universal fan base that are going to be staying relatively the same. And I use that loosely because there's going to be obviously some changes in those books as well. But they're going to be less sweeping because those titles are already working. They've already got large audience bases, and they probably already feel that they are pretty accessible compared to. So I don't know. It's interesting. But thank you so much for the comments on the show. It was never an edict. Like you and I never, Jim. We never had these discussions saying we should be really positive on the show. That's just kind of how we read comics, and we're kind of discussing the way we. This is the same conversations that Jim and I have when we're not recording. So that means you like us. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've never done that though. That was never. It was funny. At a couple conventions, I've been asked by people to come up to the table. I know you guys have some kind of rule on not talking negative. It's honestly, and it's a very honest point that they brought up. They thought that was the case. We've never said that. We never had that discussion.
For me, it's I had especially when the show first really got started, I had a lot of negativity and just a lot of negative stuff going on in my life that I was having fun, so I wasn't thinking that way. And it was just it wasn't that I told myself I wasn't going to be negative. It was I was having fun, so I wasn't negative. And in a way, that's kind of helped me be more positive in my real life. The funness and just what I'm enjoying talking about the podcast, just that kind of mindset and mentality has actually in a way affected my the real me in the real world, where I'm not looking as negative as I did in the past. And it's kind of weird how this podcast has really helped me see life a little bit more positive, helped me get through some really nasty negative stuff that I was going through. And it's one of the reasons why I so enjoy doing this. And I'm like, okay, we're recording time. Yay. And that's, kind of where the singing comes from, the show tunes, and just that happy place. Cause I'm legitimately having fun while I'm doing this, and I'm having fun while I'm reading it. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. I hope we get a chance to talk about this. Oh man, this is neat. And when we get going, that's, I think, one of the reasons we kind of have a habit of going on and on and on, and we go off on tangents because we're just goofing around having a ball.
Yeah, we've never paused the podcast and say, oh, we can't talk about that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the case with it. I don't think any podcast does that, and anyone that's stuck around for a while. You know what I mean? I think people I think the podcasts that are out there, so like DC Noise is a great example of a genuine podcast. They're just genuinely doing their thing. A lot of our friends of the show that we've become friends with that are podcasters, they're genuine podcasters, just doing their thing. They're being them. It's one of the reasons why they're friends. We like them because they're just honest and genuine in who they are. I think it's why people podcast, though. I would say the majority of the podcasts that are out there are just people like us who are just honestly getting out there and trying to talk about comics or whatever else they enjoy, because that's who they are. My experience with comics, and I'm not going to go too much into this because a lot of what Jim was saying I echo, comics for me has always been an escape from the worst in my life. I had some rough years in elementary school where I didn't have a whole lot of friends and stuff like that. I went to comics, and that was kind of my escape from all that. It was kind of that little break, and it was kind of a safety net. And it's always been that for me my whole life. As you evolve, life throws curveballs at all of us. And one of the reasons why I'm a comic reader is because we need that little escape, sometimes from things. And sometimes it helps us refocus and go back into life. And like Jim said, it gives us kind of that positive that we need. So I think the show reflects what comics do for us as readers. And I think that's maybe where, Caleb, we're connecting. It sounds like comics is that positive for you as well, and I think that's great. That's why, it's like I said, I think different podcasts have different tones based on what people get out of different experiences. So I think there's validity in everybody's approach to podcasting. This is just ours because this is our experience with comics, and I'm glad that you're connected with us. So cool.
Hey, Sean and Jim, it's Mark Ziegler from the Comic Forums. I was just calling real quick to say I really enjoyed when you talked about Teen Titans last week. Really enjoyed the book so far. Can't wait to see how it ends. I think they still have issues 99 and then issue 100, which is a little larger size issue coming out before the new launch. And really like the character development in it. Like getting to know Solstice, and sort of sad that it seems like she and Raven are going to be gone, because the conflict between them has been really interesting and hasn't really gotten fleshed out. But really enjoyed hearing y'all talk about that book. Just finished reading Flashpoint 4 today. I really like what they did with Captain Marvel in the Flashpoint universe, I guess. Just the way it's multiple kids and they have to combine together. And just really enjoyed that. Wouldn't mind seeing that in the new DCU as a whole comic series. And really like the part of how Flash was able to get Batman to agree to go with him. Just that one little line of what Bruce would have done. I just really like that. So really enjoying Flashpoint. Looking forward to see how it ends. I've only been picking up 3 of the tie-ins, Wonder Woman and the Furies, Emperor Aquaman, and Lois Lane and the Resistance. Really enjoyed all 3. And I was just wondering, out of the tie-ins, if you have a particular favorite or one that you gravitate towards. So that's basically it. A lot of good stories and a lot of things going on. There'll be some storylines and characters this month, I guess, sort of ending for now, and sort of sad to see some of them go, like the characters in Superboy and in Teen Titans, but looking forward to the future of comics and great stories to come. Talk to y'all later. I'm out. Bye.
We're going to talk Flashpoint 4 a little bit more next episode. What we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a shorter episode, but come back a little quicker for that Flashpoint one, because Jim and I are looking at the time right now. I have company in from out of town that I'm visiting with, and Jim's got to work tomorrow. So we're looking at the time, and we'd easily have another hour on the program if we did Flashpoint, because there's a lot to discuss that happened in Flashpoint 4. So I'm going to leave some of my comments on Flashpoint 4 till then. So that will be kind of a little teaser for our next episode to discuss Flashpoint 4. But, yeah, it's funny. I'm with him in the sense that it's like bitter. We've used the term bittersweet on this episode to talk about, some of our favorite series coming to an end, and I think that's true. Not just of Birds and Six that we talked about on this episode, but other books as well that are ending, like Zatanna. I'm digging Zatanna.
Oh, yeah.
And, that book's not going to be around anymore. But I'm glad that they're wrapping these books up in a way that's, I give creators a lot of credit that they're wrapping up these books in ways that are satisfying. The one it's funny, what one, and I'm kind of glossing over this. I haven't been really thinking about it. But with this discussion now, I'm realizing, it's going to be an interesting August, Superman. Because we're wrapping up Superman.
Yeah.
This is a big month for Superman with Jamal Igle on the last issue of Grounded. This is kind of a wrapping up of everything that's been going on with the characters. So it's something that we definitely need to be talking about.
Yeah.
Titans 100, Teen Titans 100 is the end of an era. So those are two big pivotal books this month that I think we need to all keep our eyes on because they're kind of our saying goodbye to those that particular continuity for those characters. There's a lot of characters where we don't know how much of what from before is going to be carried over, but we know that elements of Superman are going to be left behind, especially his marriage.
Yeah, there's, yeah.
Hey, Sean and Jim, it's Mark again. Just wanted to give a little love to The Gates of Gotham. I've been reading it after listening to your all's podcast, and it's been excellent. Really enjoyed seeing Cassandra Cain again. I recently saw her in the Red Robin issue. She was the first Batgirl that I ever read, and I like seeing her back as Black Bat. And I haven't really seen anywhere if she's going to be in the new DCU. I hope she is. Just one of my favorite overall characters, and just hope they find a place for her. Also, I was just wondering, I may have asked you all this before. If I did, I'm sorry. But let's say 6 months to a year from now, after the September launch of the new DCU, how would you characterize if it's been a successful launch? Just wondering, just sort of thinking about what will it look like to have been a successful endeavor. I know things like increased number of readers and things like that, but I'm just wondering maybe, what DC might be thinking, what you all might be thinking of how to define the success of a comic book. I know sales numbers are going to be a part of that, but I wonder if, they're selling a lot on the digital end, maybe later versus when it first comes out, if that'll be success, or if they'll look at it mainly as how many people are buying it when it first comes out, or just maybe something like that. To me, success is always if it's a good story and it draws my interest and entertains me, but I know from a business side there's a success aspect to it too. But just wondering your opinion on that. Talk to you later. Bye.
Well, first of all, I agree. It's a good story. I mean, that's a success for us as fans. That's why we're here. That's why we keep reading. So, amen. I agree with you on that. But what would make this a success? That's a really good question. The digital thing is interesting because I'm going to be curious to see how they evaluate that. Because, like you said, digital offers not only the ability to track how they're selling as they come out at first, but a longevity. Does the book continue to sell as time goes on? This is the digital end is, you can look at it more like an iTunes model where somebody could jump on at any point in time. So how are digital comics going to sell? That's going to be interesting because their price point's going to be different. It's going to be like one price point the first 30 days, then after that's another price point. So you'd almost be crazy not to track both, and also to keep track of longevity. Do titles have legs after all that's happening? New apps are purchased all the time from these stores for different mobile devices. There's also the ability to read them on your computer and stuff like that. So it's a whole different avenue. Also, and then you got to go back to the paper product. Obviously, you almost got to have those discussions separately, because I think they're two different types of fans. I really 100% do. Hopefully this will attract new readers in the comic shop, and that can be tracked by sales numbers through comic shops. What does the ordering look like for comic shops? Do they stay the same? Obviously, there's going to be, I think September is going to be a certain kind of order number. I think October is going to be a certain kind of order number. It's going to be interesting to see if these titles generate the same steady order numbers all along. Be curious to see if some titles increase. Like if some titles become buzz titles that maybe you don't expect. That would be a sign of success for me, would be for all of a sudden titles to start selling out that are unexpected. Like if an Animal Man goes crazy or a Swamp Thing goes crazy, I think that's a success. Because what do they really want? They know they've got certain success numbers with their big name heroes. I think they want an increase in the sales numbers for Superman, for example. That's a title that they're looking for success with that. I'm sure, like with Green Lantern and Batman, they want more sales there as well. But I think they're looking at some of their lesser-known characters, hopefully finally being able to launch into some stronger numbers as far as those titles go. And will digital bring a different audience to titles that maybe didn't have an audience before? I don't know. So that's really going to be the success of this whole thing. The digital's in its infancy, so I don't think, comic companies, we as readers don't know how to react to digital. I mean, we've been talking about it, for the last couple of years on this show, and, I still, I'm into the whole thing, but, I still don't know how to react to it. And I love paper still, too, so I think it's great the same way that I thought trades and hardcovers were great when they were introduced. And I just think, but I don't think they knew how trades and hardcovers would impact single issues. So I don't think they know digital yet what that looks like. To me, it does go down to sales numbers. It goes down to new readers. And the only way you're going to keep those people, again, is what Mark said at the end, great stories. I think it's one thing to attract them. If you're delivering great content, people will keep coming back. Yeah, I don't know. You have anything else you're thinking?
Yeah, it's weird because, when you look what is a success, and I always will lean towards the sales numbers, but it's not a across-the-board blank. It's, you look at what Superman was doing before. Is it still the same? Has it increased? Has it decreased? You mentioned, like, with some of these other characters and that are, these new, like Animal Man or Swamp Thing, or I know they're not new characters, but, they weren't around before. They weren't having their own monthlies, during this last run. This relaunch gives them, once again, a monthly, seeing how that plays out, seeing how that goes. And I think they're going to be open-ended, looking at the different characters. And people who, like, they're bringing back Blue Beetle and giving him another shot at his solo title. I think they're going to look and see, and if this whole relaunch thing helps him out, helps, increase his popularity, because there are more people out there who follow the animated stuff that know of Blue Beetle, that know of Jaime. They know a little bit about him, so now we're going to give him a comic. We're going to give them something else to follow with him and see where that goes. I think everybody, they have probably numbers in their head where they want the different titles to be at, and that's, in the end, the best way for them to actually, it's a quantitative number, to say, yes, this is what it is. Good stories are the tool to increase sales. If you don't have good stories, you're not going to have a way for better, for the increased sales. So I think it's kind of a synergy of it is art, and it is a creative process, and it is everything beyond just the business side of it, but it is still a business, and the business is, business law is very simple. You have to, if something's not making money, you either adjust it or you drop it. And that's kind of actually how things will look eventually with the books.
I think, I want to add one more thing to this. Because he's talking about a year later, what do we want to look for? And sales numbers, I can tell you right now, what they're going to be looking at is what kind of sales numbers do we have across the board in August of 2010, 2011, and then 2012. I think they're going to be looking at year by year saying, are we showing growth from this move? So I think they've been looking at past numbers and seeing, what books have been dropping down, how their sales numbers have been doing, because they're looking at market share versus, Marvel, for example, and just comics in general. And then forgetting looking outside, you got to look internally and say, what titles have been losing numbers? Why are they losing numbers? What can we do to get people interested in these titles again? And I think what they're also looking at, though, is I think they're looking at targeting a fan who is not your normal comic fan, too, with the apps. So what would be a success a year from now would be if their sales numbers are a decent amount more, I'm talking about across the board, than they were in August this year. I think that's what they're looking for. So I think the same sales numbers would be considered a failure. Mm-hmm. As far as you looked at how much product did we sell, in a same number of books at this time, I think that would be considered a failure. So I'm hoping that this creates a new energy. I'm glad to see, we're seeing articles in our newspaper here, Plain Dealer, about it. Mike Sangiacomo does a great job, and we're seeing some great articles in there about it. I know USA Today's had articles about this. So, there's some buzz outside of the comics about them, and it's great that these journalists are doing such a cool job of just getting the word out about comics and giving some really interesting commentary. Mike Sangiacomo always does a great job in the Plain Dealer about it. I'm really got a lot of respect for his work and just how intelligent his commentary is on comics, and it's just great to see that. And it'd be great if a year from now we see a larger space devoted to that. Yeah, because I think it's a cool thing, and hopefully that kind of buzz will be generated. So that's the ultimate success. Is there more? More readers. Jim, I want to talk about Secret Six number 36. And it's why I kind of corrected myself when we were talking about birds. Because, I was sitting there saying with the birds, this is my absolute favorite comic. And it is. But here's my other absolute favorite comic. and I do, it's very true. When I read this issue, I was like, wow. This was, to me, the Secret Six spaghetti Western ending. Yeah. That I'm like, wow. It's exactly what it's, Last Stand at the OK Corral, and these are the outlaws. These aren't the good guys, they're the outlaws.
Yeah, and I'd tell you, even before we get into the book, just the cover itself. Yeah. This was just absolutely wonderful cover art. It's, you initially look at it on the outside, it's, the team there, like, oh, okay. But then you start looking through where the lettering and through where the bullet holes are, and you can tell it's like it's a cover on top of a cover. Even Ragdoll is peeling back the one cover to kind of reveal what's underneath it. And for me, it looks like it's that movie that the advertisement that they did a couple issues ago, where they're advertising, hey, we're a team, we're for rent, we're for hire, we're recently, it was that whole sales pitch they did. It looks like it's that sequence, but it's a cover on top of that. And I thought that was just a nice multi-layering, and I thought that was oh, that's cool.
One of the things that was really important to me with this title and that I was really impressed with, and it was something that you can't always do on every book, but you were able to do with this particular title because of its nature. They tied up a lot of storylines. And it was in a way where I thought they gave screen time to everything they needed to. Bane and the girlfriend. and really just how a fish out of water he is. And how really for him it was a weird learning. It shows that he's a broken man, and when I say broken man, he's never going to be quote unquote normal, no matter what you do, at least by our standard of normal. This is normal for Bane and the way that Bane's going to react. He's looking at Miss Spencer and sitting here saying he's realized now that this is a weakness of his. Being with her has given him a new weakness. And distancing himself from this relationship, and all relationships, are going to make him stronger. That was a learning experience for him, and it becomes a major theme for this particular issue for Bane. And it's one that he's willing to die to achieve, if he has to, which to me was mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it was this opening sequence, this opening page, where there's combinations of funny moments, and then when you start looking at the level beyond just the comic, you realize some of the deep stuff you're talking about, Bane and his weaknesses. I laughed out loud when she's saying, "I didn't expect you to be so gentle," and he's like, "Well, you're kind of little with, very little significant muscle mass. I was worried about breakage." And I was dying throughout that. And then you continue on when he's like, "These feelings, they make me want to protect you." It's like, isn't that a good thing? For my enemies. And I was sitting there reading this going, oh, this is awesome. And it's a combination of a funny moment, and then you see beyond the laughter that there's something else deeper. And that's, for me, what the Secret Six has always been about. You got this surface level, story being told, but when you start looking underneath when you just start looking a little bit deeper into the character, who they are, why they're doing what they're doing, you get, just more behind the story. And that's something why with Secret Six I always got to read it multiple times, and I'm sitting there and I'm more or less studying the book and just trying to figure out exactly what we're seeing, what's going on, did I miss anything. And that's something I enjoy and I always get out of Secret Six, and why I list it as my top book. It's always this, because you're dancing back and forth. Birds, Six, birds. For me, Six always beats the Birds just because of moments like this. Just the way these characters grew and developed, and it just
See, for me, it's always, though, Birds has that same development. It just looks different because they're heroes. So it is a very different development. If you look at the relationship between Huntress and Black Canary and Lady Blackhawk and Barbara, and the way that that's been constantly developed, the way, Huntress has stepped up for Dinah. These are characters who, I think were just as well developed. It just looked differently. Even the relationship between Huntress and Catman, when they've had those appearances, their evolution and development has kind of echoed each other. So it's really, to me, one of the reasons why do I teeter-totter? In many ways, these books have been companion pieces to each other for me ever since Six was created, and we started having crossovers between the two. They were in some way the lighter and darker side of each other. So to me, I have trouble separating them because in my own needs as a reader, they mirror each other. I need both. I need both viewpoints. To me, they're a whole. So it's something that I really have enjoyed about both of these books. They just kind of are just different images of each other. Now, this is a question that I started having as the more I've read this issue 4 times now. In my last 2 readings, there was something I started thinking about. What if Bane had won? Because he offers in 24 hours, you will be Empress of Gotham City, or I will be dead, as will be my associates. So he was willing to die here, and he's realizing this is a very good possibility. He knows what he's doing and what he's undertaking. And because he's not just going after Batman, he's going after everyone Batman cares about, and those people have allies and friends too. So he's realizing this is really a last stand that he's going to. This is exactly where it feels like spaghetti western to me.
Yeah.
But what if he'd won? What would that have been like for Bane? Do you think it would have just been with him ruling Gotham? Or where do you think it would have gone? Because I have my own idea, but I'm just curious to see what yours is.
See, part of me, looks at this that Bane never planned on winning. Bane, from the beginning, knew he was going to lose this fight, knew that they weren't going to win, and this was his way of completely separating himself. You look at the ending, the very ending of the book, when he rises up and he's like, I had to separate myself from these weaknesses. For me to actually truly be who I am, I have to get rid of the friendships he was making on the team. With Miss Spencer here, he needed to get rid of all of them. So from the beginning, Bane's plan was to lose. This was all a ruse to make people think they beat him. And in reality, this is just the first part of his master plan. And I'm hoping we'll see the master plan lay out, in one of the Bat titles.
I agree with you to a certain extent, yet I think that oversimplifies the humanity of Bane. Bane's a human, so there is more to him than that. And when he is kissing her on the forehead in that moment, he knows that these are weaknesses of Batman because he has those feelings, which means there is a part of himself that desires to win on this. So I don't think he walked into there thinking, I do agree with you in the sense that he was prepared to lose, and I think that's why he starts with that. But I don't think it's that simple. I do think there's that part of him that would long for the life where he does beat. I mean, obviously, his goal is to beat Batman. And if he could actually do it, that would be a major victory for him. It is something he wants. That is a desire that's there. So I don't think he walked in saying to himself, I need to lose here. I think he knew that he more than likely would. And ultimately, at the end, I do think that revelation comes from, like, I think he's made peace with himself over everything that happened. But I think we see right here in this opening sequence the true conflict that's going on with Bane. I do think that's genuine. I do think there is a part of him that's saying, if we can win this here, she could be my empress. And I'm actually was thinking to myself, I'm like, what if on some fluke chance, because I do agree with you that I think Bane's thinking that is a fluke. If he actually were to pull this off, it's not, that's a small possibility. But that, as with any option that is on the table, I can't imagine him just staying in, like, Gotham would be like his little empire. But either the six would be turning on each other eventually. Yeah. Or they would have conflicts with the outside, because that just is the way things would be. You can't have any kind of government like that, or any kind of whatever you want to call him, considered the Empress of Gotham City. You can't have that kind of power in place without it eventually leading conflict with other villains, with other heroes, whether you want to stay out of them or not. And Bane's always one that you can't let anybody else, he wouldn't stay back and say, oh, we're not going to fight with you. He would have to show power in retaliation, or stomp them out in order to maintain intimidation. That's just the way he's wired. Yeah. He wouldn't let them come in and, try to intimidate him or try to pick a fight with him and let it go. He would have to do something. So if they won Gotham, they would be universally always in conflict with somebody. It's, with very few downtimes.
Well, taking a town and holding the town are two different things.
Right.
If he were to somehow pull off this victory and actually able to take out all four targets that they've identified, he'd have to go on to the next step, because just taking out the four targets would just hurt Batman. It wouldn't completely break him. Then they'd have to go after Batman. But once they engage those four, that escalates the whole thing. If they were able to kill four heroes in this universe, well, the ending where the entire, basically, TCU swarmed them would have happened at that point in time.
Right.
So it's funny because, does Bane probably have a plan? Yeah, he probably does have ideas. He probably does have, multiple steps in the line. But I think, there's probably he's got multiple contingencies. If this happens, if this happens, if this happens, we kill one target but not the other targets. We do this, and in the end, it's all his main goals, I think, are to free himself from the weakness, because that is who Bane is, and he's got that turmoil and he's got that conflict in him, and that's because. As much as he doesn't want to be, human, he is human. He does have those feelings, but I think this whole plan, the end goal was to remove all of his attachments.
I'm going to completely disagree with you on that. See, I think that was something that happened as a part of this, but you're forgetting the previous issue with the whole layout. His goal here is to break the Bat. He wants to take him down and win. That was his original goal in Nightfall. That was, and this is something that he realized when he broke Bruce, but then Jean Paul came back, as Batman and broke down Bane. Bruce came back, took over, and has beaten Bane since then. It's a goal that he realized for a brief period of time. He was the king of Gotham for a brief period of time. There is that internal desire of his to reclaim his kingdom. So that is there. And I shouldn't say I'm totally disagreeing with you, because I agree with you at the end when he has those moments. I think there is that part of himself that's realizing he has these emotions and things. But I'm also thinking at the end he comes to the realization this didn't work because I had these emotions. Because when I was setting up this situation, I was setting it up based on this team. Look at this war room planning that he was doing here with the team. His plan was the targets are Red Robin, Batgirl, Catwoman, and Huntress. He kept throwing Huntress in, knowing Catman had said no to her. Why did he do it? Because that was his plan. Those were the logical steps. Because he allowed himself emotionally to listen to Catman there, he took Huntress out of the equation, put Azrael in as the fourth target. He's seeing multiple situations like this. It's one of the things that I enjoy about Secret Six is, yes, all of these characters are villains, but each of the characters, no matter how close they are, each of these characters have relationship ties. They have moral codes. The moral codes are very different as far as who they will and won't kill, who they consider innocent and who they do not consider innocent. And honestly, you got to remember, they didn't think they were going to have to deal with the entire DCU superheroes. This was because of the Penguin that all happened. So that wasn't something Bane accounted for. He didn't account for the fact that the entire DC universe was going to be breathing down their necks. Now, did he think after they accomplished this, there was a good possibility they'd have to do that? Sure. And that is something that was in the back of his mind, I'm sure. And I'm sure he saw the possibility that this was going to be, going after Batman and going after all of his people. If they win, they are bringing down a whole bunch of heat on them. Agree with you 110%. But remember, this was a swerve that was thrown in by the Penguin. That was something that they didn't expect at that moment. They thought they were going to be dealing with the Bat Family. They thought they were dividing and conquering the Bat Family, which is a bold move. And they knew that, forgetting the DC Universe, taking them out of it, just putting the Bat Family in there, they knew that they were putting themselves in a very dangerous situation by just doing that. So they didn't know what was coming at this point. So I don't know that I agree that Bane was totally trying to separate himself from the team here. I think he was trying to make this work with the squad that he got. But I think looking back at that end, when he's being carted off, analyzing the situation, you've got to believe when he's on that stretcher, he's thinking back to this moment where he said Huntress, and one of many times he said Huntress, because she was brought up in the last issue too. Catman said no. And he had direct words with Catman saying, I will not, it was something about not tolerating insubordination or anything like that. It's really, he's the leader and he wants Catman to know it. And he that was weakness at that moment in Bane's eyes. So I don't think it's that simple as him wanting to distance himself from this team at this moment. I think he wanted this plan to work. I do.
Well, one of the things that it's funny because as you're talking, I can't really argue the point because it's very possibility. There is very strong, part of me is saying yes, yes, yes. But the one thing that does kind of give me pause to think that his plan the entire time was for it to go horribly wrong for them was the fact that he didn't kill the Penguin for the double cross. So to me, I'm like, if he didn't go up to Penguin and say, oh, okay, nice double cross, snap, kill him, that tells me that all along, this was where he wanted to go. This is how he wanted it to play out. Either he knew Penguin would double cross him, or he knew that one of the, they would, maybe he was thinking after taking out or attacking the member of the Bat Family is when the swarm would happen to him. I don't know where his thought is, but that, to me, is one of the key factors, and me holding on to the fact that Bane from day one knew he was going to lose this fight and planned for him to lose this fight, and that's where he wanted to go. And as I say that, I don't want to sound like I'm arguing with you and saying you're absolutely wrong, because there could very possibly, you could be 100% correct, and I would accept that. It's just, these are the things that always kept me holding on to my theory.
So you're saying that right from the start of all this, he wanted to separate himself from Scandal Savage?
Yes, he wanted from the entire team. From the entire team and from Miss Spencer. And that was a great way for him to separate himself from that, from her by that whole final, farewell that he did to her. He's like, either I'm going to be dead or you're going to be the Empress of Gotham. And, by telling her that, he's like, you're still, he's basically letting her know, he kind of says, it's not you, it's me, letting her off the hook, kind of breaking up with her, but in a way so that she's not going to feel like she got dumped. If he had succeeded in his mission, then they'd be together. And that she could hold on to that, and she wouldn't feel like he's abandoning her and he's leaving her as well. But I think it was all his plan all along to lose in the end.
See, and I don't see it that way. I don't see that it was his plan all along to lose in the end. I think he thought initially that his plan with the Bat Family was going to work. And also, I've got an answer for the reason why he didn't kill Penguin. He didn't have a chance. He asked Penguin who all was there. Why would you kill him then in case you need more information from him?
Because I think Penguin just opened up and said, hey, everybody's here. I mean, they already had visuals on how many people were out there. The first thing I would have done right before the last thing I would have done right before charging out, all fueled up and jacked up, would have been snap Penguin's neck. Or if I was Deadshot, put one in his head and just,
But they're still debating over they don't have time. They're debating over the hostages. When did he have time? They didn't get to Cobblepot.
It would take him half a second to snap his neck.
I know, but they're still
Come on, it's
debating.
Bane.
But they're debating over the hostages. I mean, read the issue. They're debating over the hostages. They don't have the time. They never got to that point. Like, look, he's not. It's not like you're acting like he's standing by Cobblepot. If you look at the issue, I mean, it's something that I thought was brilliantly laid out. Right after he's done talking to Penguin, they're thinking about how to use the hostages as an advantage in this situation, and that's what they're talking about at that moment. He's completely over. He's not even anywhere near Cobblepot. He's over by the kids talking about Blake, talking to Blake about, what to do with these hostages. And, there's that debate with Ragdoll going on. Thomas, I hesitate to point out, but 5 hostages are much better than 1 hostagess. Because remember, Huntress has shown up at this point, too.
Right.
So again, when is there that opportunity, like to say, let me go kill Cobblepot now? There's just not that room. There's not that. I know, first of all, let me go back and say what you said about Bane could do this in like split second. I agree with that. He could do that. But there's not that point in time. We don't see him visually at a point in time where he's even over in a situation where he would do that. He's dealing with so many other things throughout this as they're coming up with a plan on how to deal with everything that's coming for them, that there just isn't a point in time to do that. So I don't know. It's... they made the decision to go out like gods, and I guess he just... The only opportunity, and I will actually defend you with this one, the only opportunity that he would have had to have done it was right at the end, right before they're ready to rush out together, where you got Ragdoll saying, stop, please stop. We are worthless. We are scum of this planet. We have only one redemptive trait, my dear, sick, wounded friends. We don't know how to surrender. And you see in that moment that, the Penguin's like kind of almost cheering them on at that moment. I just don't see that there was an opportunity. It wouldn't have made sense there for him to have snapped his neck.
Well, the only thing is, again, he's standing right next to Penguin, and he's like, hey, I may even get a medal for it. All right, And he's like, no, you won't. And just snapped his neck. Right then and there is when he could have done it. And I say he didn't do it because this all played into his master plan.
And see, I never looked at that as being his master plan. It says, but my plan left no room for error. The authorities think they have won, but my plan left no room for error. Either I conquered my enemy, or I was set free of all human encumbrance. So he was looking at, there was a possibility there of conquering the enemy. And he knew if it didn't work, there was the other choice. These are the 2 choices he laid out at the beginning of the issue. He always saw them as being 2 possibilities. So I'm not arguing with you that let me go back. You're right that he saw this as one possibility. I guess I'm not of the mind that this was always the possibility that he thought was going to be 100% it. He saw that there was 2 choices all along. So I am agreeing with you to a certain extent that I agree with you. You're talking about path A. Mm-hmm. But you're making it seem like there was no path B that he was considering, and I completely disagree with you there. I think he was definitely thinking path B was a very strong possibility of working. So I guess I'm agreeing with you to a certain extent, but I think you're ignoring a major part of his plan. And you're saying that wasn't something that he was actually thinking could have worked out, and I do think he was. So when he followed one path in his planning, he would get to where you said. Right. I agree with that. But I don't agree with your theory that he was thinking path B was not as equally a possibility of happening. As I think his dialogue at the end is exactly what he was thinking. I really thought that plan of breaking the bat was very important to him and was not something that he was throwing off to the side and saying this isn't going to work.
Yeah. And as you're talking, as I'm again rereading while you're talking, just that final page where he's sitting there saying they think they've won. But, and he's going through just how he's going to miss their antics, but he can't have that. He can't have those attachments and be Bane. He has to separate himself. And then you got that line: either I conquer my enemy, or I was set free of the human encumbrance, even the girl. So it's right there. It is pointing towards the fact that he did have Plan A of victory, or if victory doesn't happen, he's got to take it to the next level and really just have everyone eliminated and or have all his connections, set aside.
I guess what I'm saying is I was seeing him saying, I'm willing to if this can work, I'm willing to give up being quote unquote Bane. And when he's saying Bane there, he's using Bane as an idea, as a concept. Not, talking about him. Obviously, he's going to still be him. But he's seeing if Path B works and this actually worked out as a plan, it sets him in a different situation than he would have been in if he were Bane. And that's what he's referring to when he's talking about himself in the third person there. He's, talking about this isolated, calculated planner, this guy who doesn't need any attachments and isn't weakened by those attachments. But if I can make these attachments work and this plan works and we are able to pull this off and be a strong, organized unit to do this, I think the ending of this one was one where, to me, it was the ending of it's a tragedy. And a lot of times spaghetti westerns end in a tragedy. That's why the spaghetti western thing works. I sound like I'm disagreeing with you. I am and I'm not. Everything you were saying about one path, I agree with. I'm like, okay, Jim's right. A to B, that is one path that Bane was looking at. I just don't think Bane was thinking that path B wasn't going to work. I think he was thinking that there was a strong possibility that either path could be the way that this goes. At the end, when he's saying it was the perfect plan, that's what made it the perfect plan. He was comfortable with A or B. I guess here's the question that I have for you, throwing it back. What path do you think he really wanted?
See, I'm still going to stick to that. He wanted path B. He wanted a separation from his emotions and separation from his connections. His human connections, I think he saw that as weakness, as his ultimate downfall. I think he always thought he had to get rid of that. But he probably did have a contingency in case they won. But I don't know. Bane's a tough character. He's a tough guy to get a hold of and understand what he's thinking and where he's going with something. So I'm still holding on to part of my thing, but I'm not holding on as strongly, and I'm more open for other interpretations and or opinions.
I'm going to go again to his internal dialogue. My plan left no room for error. Either I conquered my enemy. Remember, he says this first.
Yeah.
Or I was set free of all human encumbrances, even the girl. Okay? So that was his first comment was, if I could beat my enemy, that would be, the ideal, optimal choice. But if that doesn't work, and when he goes back, except, I'll contradict myself here. When you go back in the beginning, though, he's saying either we'll be dead or you'll be my empress. So he always came off to me as being torn in this. I don't know that I'm as comfortable feeling that he was cut and dry, saying it was A or B. And I'm not going to say that the choice that you lay out there. My answer, honestly, is I think he was torn all along. I think there was that part of him that very much wanted to beat the Bat. He wanted this to work. He wanted to be, the king of Gotham again, to have that on his name, to be the one who did that, that organized this team together and got them to do it. Because he was trying to organize the team. It wasn't an issue of, it wasn't like him running with equals. If you look at the way he was talking to all of them, he was squad leader and boss and whatever you want to call him in his role. I don't know, how clearly defined it is. He's definitely the one in charge here. He's calling the shots. People are speaking up, and he's listening, but he's still ultimately making the choice to say yes or no, in those circumstances. And I think he sees the fact that he had compassion for them as a weakness, and I agree with you on that at the end. But wow. The duality of him was something that I really struck here, because he was always uncomfortable when he started having the relationship with Scandal Savage, where there was that friendship and, those emotions were growing in him. But I think there was that part of him that liked being that father figure to her, whatever weird kind of relationship they had, and that's something that he was longing for, because he didn't have that, himself. He was kind of abandoned when he was younger. So it's funny looking at Bane's history. I think that's what it is. I'm not just looking at this issue. I'm looking at his history, and I'm seeing him as being torn. So again, I'm not – and that's one of the things I love about this issue. I can hear everything you're saying, and I'm like, I don't want to say – I know I've said multiple times that you're wrong on this, and I'll take that back because it's not that simple. I agree with everything you're saying, but I think there's more to it is what is kind of where I'm at. So it's not that you're wrong. It's that I don't feel that's the whole story. So my path is really kind of agreeing with you and building on it. I don't know that either of us has to be right or wrong on this one.
Yeah.
So I want to take that out of this because you're seeing it differently than me, and that's okay. That's half the fun of personalizing the story and getting to know this character. I do feel like you and I are talking about an old friend.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and this whole team is just old friends of mine, and yeah, they're a bit on the bad side, but you know what? It's, you know, the character development over the life of Secret Six has just been such that and it's funny, I say I understand them, but they're still a mystery because they do have this completely different mindset. You know, just this, you know, they are villains, they are killers, they are these bad people. So on that side of it, there's some parts of them we will never completely understand, we'll never completely get. And I think that's, for me, has always been the compellingness behind the story, and that you see the glimmers of a good guy. You see, like Bane, if he could just let go of some of his, you know, issues and his, you know, his hatred and just that, and you know, and kind of, you know, maybe embrace a better life, you know, they all could have had a happy ending, but that's not who they are. You know, you see Scandal, you know, get, you know, both with, you know, her two, you know, they have their triple wedding, you know, and she wants to marry them both, and she could have this wonderful, happy life. The three of them could go off and live and, you know, be together, and everything's wonderful. Bane could go with, you know, his lady friend, and he could have a, you know, just a good life, but that's not who they are. That's not their nature. That's not their character. And in a way, it's a tragedy, you know, because it's the tragic, you know, flaws of these characters. But on the other hand, they are the bad guys. They're not supposed to win.
Here's the line, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm ignoring this to prove my point. There's a line here which would be a major point of contention between you and me, because it all depends on how you see this line. It was caring, it was emotion that made me weak, and now I am free of it as I planned all along. So this verifies, in theory, what you're saying. I guess I looked at that as saying, though, he was always talking two options from the get-go. So if you follow your option path that you're talking about, that would be his plan. If they lose, he would be free of all emotion. He would be free of these people if he lost. But in the end, where he talks about, and I have a kingdom to win, it again shows his overall goal, which was plan A, or B, I think we flip-flopped which one's which. He wanted to win the kingdom. So if that plan worked and he was able to win the kingdom, he would have been very happy with that. So he's an interesting tragedy, because I agree that he totally saw both possibilities and they were planned that way. I also think this is compliments to the writer and the creative team. I think this is putting Bane in a position for wherever he's going to be in the 52 new titles. I'm guessing that because I thought I heard somewhere in one of the panels Bane being mentioned as a villain used, and I might be wrong on that, but it obviously puts him again as a solo villain where he's able to be a part of all that.
I know they mentioned in one of the Bat titles, they made some reference to either like someone's going to have to just say no, or they mentioned about juicing and, you know, that kind of just, you know, following that story. And you think about it, they've run.
Oh, that was the Dark Knight. That was the Dark Knight series has been following this juicing up the people. That was like a backstory in the Dark Knight series. It's actually continually going on right now in that series. So you're right. I think that's the book where we're going to see Bane, right?
That's how I took it, and that's why I think maybe we're going to get Bane in that book. But he can make an appearance in the regular Bat title. Who knows?
Well, that is a regular Bat title.
Batman that's the Batman. Yeah.
So okay. That's why I said I thought that he was going to be an appearance in a Bat book. It's funny how I think of the regular Bat titles as Batman and Detective too. So I'm not disputing you on that, but that is another Bat title, and that is another main Bat title. So that's not like a Batman Confidential or something like that. That actually is a main Bat title. So I thought that story was supposed to have Bane in it. So I thought if we're right on that, this is a great job of putting this character in a place where we've closed up the storyline and put him in a position where he could be in that story. Mm-hmm. You know, while giving us a satisfying ending to this. I don't know. Go ahead.
One of the things I really did like about this was every time, you know, Deadshot keeps calling out who's now arriving. Because when he's the first one at the window, he's monitoring it, you know, tracking down who's showing up. And I love it when he's like, "What? They got two Batmans? What happened? What are they take turns or something?" Then when Team Superman, Supergirl, Connor with Steel, who else? Tornado, and the Red Red Star show up. He's like, sorry to say it, guys, but the just got real. I was like, oh, man, they're pulling in everybody. And I thought that was just a cool way of just, more and more. And even in the initial thing when Boots was like, hey, come on, it's Catman. He's a joke. And Hunter's like, you don't know this team. They took down the rest of the society. They got a Banshee in there that made, Wonder Woman see stars. We need everybody. We need them now. This is not a joke. And I loved seeing just that whole, you call, call for backup, call it whatever you say. You hit them, piece through superior firepower, and I just loved seeing just more and more and more beyond what they possibly could need for anybody they had at this fight, and it was just a really awesome way for the Six to finally go down.
Before you go back, there's one scene that I want to make sure that we talk about in here, and it involves Catman and Deadshot and Ragdoll. Did you see what Ragdoll was using as bait?
Well, he said his underwear.
Right. Do you see what the underwear is?
No, I missed something. Hold on.
It's third panel in on that page. Superman underwear.
Superman underwear. All right.
Which is really, really funny. But the part that I really wanted...
that. Outstanding.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I love... I said I've read back four times on this one. I went one time and I just looked at the art for little tiny details like that. And Jim Calafiore is really good at... putting in those really tiny details that I enjoy. But this one sequence of events was great because, sure, okay, if you die, I want that ridiculous Catmobile, though. Going to use it for target practice, you understand? And this bit with Ragdoll, where Ragdoll interrupts him and says, shut up, the both of you. Excuse me? The two of you would rather stab and shoot each other than admit that you enjoy each other's company. And I'm supposed to be the deranged one. Be men for once. Admit you're friends. It won't kill you. Better winch up or catch... And I mean, just that little dialogue there, it's the truth. And I loved how it's kind of something that we've seen since the beginning of this series. This series is 36 issues in. That's not including the minis beforehand. We had 2 minis before this. If you count Villains United and Secret Six. So this relationship has developed over 36 issues, though, really, because the closeness between the two of them, I think, more developed in this series than it did even in the 2 previous minis. We got to see a lot more of the buddy hanging out. I remember that specifically, that one issue where the two of them were kind of driving around together very early on in the series, and we talked about just how cool it was to see kind of the buddy cop villains. But I'm glad at the end here that, Ragdoll kind of slaps in the face and says, hey... And it's something I would love to see these two paired up together again at some point in time.
Oh, definitely. Because Deadshot's going to be in the Suicide Squad. Mm-hmm. So, in a way, I'd like to see Catman in with that mix. But on the other hand, I don't know. I don't know if it'll be the same type of vibe because it's a different team. Mm-hmm. So it's weird because when they're in the Six together, when they're the main characters, when they have that that feel, that buddy cop vibe going, I think it would be different than if they're on the Suicide Squad team.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm more thinking kind of like what happened with Birds of Prey, how these guys those girls were separated for a while, then they came back together. It was interesting to see them bringing all the baggage from everything that had happened to them in that time apart. It would be fun to see that with some of the characters in this, because obviously I think if we get a Secret Six book again, we're going to be able to use some of these characters, but I'm guessing it's not going to be all of them. I hope that Suicide Squad wouldn't keep Deadshot off the table.
I think if we were to get a Secret Six book, and I hope to God we do, because it's, as I said, it's my favorite book. I think we would get definitely Catman, Deadshot, Scandal, and I hope we would get. Well, I like King Shark and I like Ragdoll, but I think both of those two are definitely on or off the table. I don't know. So it's...
Oh, no, see, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say I think Deadshot's a little bit more question mark because he's in Suicide Squad. You got a character that's being used elsewhere.
Well, I actually that's part of the reason why I think they would pull him in. I think would be the birth of the team, would be Deadshot leaving the Suicide Squad. And that's how the book starts up with Deadshot. Basically, Deadshot goes to the Suicide Squad thinking, okay, if I'm with the government, if I'm able to do this, maybe I can help out my friends. Maybe I can help out the team and get them to freedom, get them to safety, and get them out of whatever prison they're going to be in. And, That's why I don't know about all of the teams, if he'd be able to get to everybody, or if he'd only be able to get to one, or just a couple of them, or how that would play out. But that's how I would see the 6 coming back as Deadshot escaping the Suicide Squad and getting out of it somehow.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to see, because there's a lot of different options you could do with that. And you can even have him still on the Suicide Squad, technically.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Because we're talking, Bane and as they're getting ready for that final fight, they're all saying, "Hey, we're going to go down. I'm going down swinging," and they're planning for death. But we know heroes don't like to kill, and it's a lot of these people that are in this mix aren't the killing heroes. They are take down, hurt, prevent them from stopping. Yes, maybe they've taken a life if they've had to, but they're not their first. Their first thought isn't kill. Do you think any of the 6 here actually did die in this fight? Because my theory is they all survived. And
I agree.
Part of the reason I think that is because you start looking at who's firing on who. Now, Jeanette is one of the ones that I don't know about, because she got taken down by Captain Atom. And while he is a hero and he is a good guy, I think with his energy levels he's pumping out, he could very easily kill her by accident, and or he may cross the line. But everybody else, seeing who takes them out, I think, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Captain Atom didn't take out Jeanette. Canary did.
Right.
She got her with the Canary Cry. It's, Atom took out, what's her name? Drawing a blank.
Knockout.
Thank you. Oh my God, I drew a blank there. He took out Knockout,
but she was still talking. She was still talking after that.
Yeah,
because she was calling Scandal wife.
Right.
Which actually we didn't talk about that either. Scandal's marriage.
Yes.
She ended up marrying both girls.
I like that.
I did too.
And as I said, a possibility for a happy ending. And even Jeanette says a happy ending. I didn't think that is still possible. And I thought that was cool. And it's another part of the story that I would like to see continue on. And I'd like to see them acknowledge all 3 of them together, or, make reference to the 2 of them together if they can't have all 3 of them, or however they're going to play this out.
Yeah, I actually really liked that sequence. I was glad that wasn't ignored. Yeah, I wonder what that marriage is going to be like with the prison now.
Well, I don't know if they allow conjugal visits or any type of close quarter contact. I know personally, if I was a warden, there's no way I would put Scandal and Knockout in the same prison, much less the same room.
Yeah, I agree.
You put those 2 together, the first thing, well, I was going to say the first thing they do is plan an escape. That's probably not the first thing they would do, but after the first thing is when they would plan their escape.
I want to read this story.
Yeah.
Like, what you're saying as you're laying it out, I'm like, okay, I want to see what it's like. Like, where do they go from here?
Yeah.
Like, this is a sign of a great story, where I actually want to see what happens to the characters after this. It was really just a very good ending. I'm glad that they did this kind of Alamo-style Last Stand ending for these guys. Knowing it was hopeless, and yet... Yeah, see, and I'm very torn, because there's that part of myself, like, even now as I'm talking, I was very much, like, in the camp that I thought Bane was wanting more to win, and I still think that wanting to win was there, but I do agree with you to a certain extent that I do think there was that part of him that was thinking it was, was not going to work. So I think that's where I think he was torn. I think, his desire versus what he was thinking, I think that's why both paths were equal, but for very different reasons. There's the emotional desire side, and then there is the rational side of him that saw where it was going to go. So I still go with 50-50 on it, but it's a cool story on that end. I love seeing the tiny details at the end of the fight where you're talking about, where everybody's kind of laying down. I loved in the corner, and this is funny. It's just such tiny things. You see the right people together consoling each other. Like, you've got Black Canary there with Huntress. You've got Blue Beetle there with Booster. Batman with Red Robin around Bane. And then, a lot of other heroes, like, looking on who don't have as close of a connection. I just thought some of that was interesting.
Well, and you still see, if you look at that Booster and Blue Beetle, you see some legs laying down. That's the dead Dr. Light. I think the female Dr. Light is dead. Because they even, in the one panel... they're talking when the Six first rush out, the heroes get bunched up and they trip over themselves, and the Six take advantage of that, and they're taking out heroes. And the one line, because it's Huntress's dialogue, and they're more than capable of killing a few of us along the way. So maybe we got a little, maybe we got a little brutal when First Blood was drawn on one of ours, and you see Dr. Light getting hit and going down. So I'm wondering if she's dead.
That's really funny. Yeah, I didn't notice. You know what? Wow.
You see the little boots right there, and I think that's what Beetle's comforting Booster for, because Booster knew Dr. Light, and he's like, hey.
See, if you take a look at the shot, it's on her shoulder, it looked like. If you take a look at the actual art.
Right.
Where the actual point of impact was. But you're right. Booster looks like he's got his face in his hands. So I don't know. I guess, you're right. There's a good possibility we lost the female Dr. Light there.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know. Interesting.
It's, again, I want to see where this continues on in the 52, if there's reference to it, because this could actually very easily be, further explained in the Suicide Squad, because it was, Deadshot who took the shot. They may make reference to it in the upcoming series, that the reason he's there is because he killed Dr. Light.
Ooh. See, I guess I was thinking because so many things were going to be younger that this was not going to be a part of that, but I guess I take it back now. Maybe a hero killer would be the reason to put him in?
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be a good use of it. I guess I was ready to dispute you on that, but now I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, no, on second thought, I think he's right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know. Maybe. There's so much I'm interested and excited for in the 50. See, I really am excited for the new 52 titles that are going to be coming out. The closer we get to it, the more I'm excited for it. And you know what I think really it is? It's books like this, and just a lot of the books that are being released this month that are having good closure. They're putting me in a place where I'm not left hanging. I mean, like, we obviously want to know what happens to these characters and that type of thing. But, I mean, the stories themselves, the ones we've been following, are all tied up. And that's very satisfying. And I really commend creators for doing that. Because when you're going to do something like as ambitious as what's happening in September, in order to make us as fans feel more comfortable and get more excited and get charged up for it, I think now I'm more charged up than I've been charged up all along. We've done a lot of chats about this on the show. But every comic that I'm reading that has a real good closure to its story arc, a real good tie-up to what's been going on, has me more excited for, okay, where do we go from here? What's next? What's the new thing? Which is the place that all of the readers should be in order for what you're going to do in September. So it's very smart the way that they've done careful planning to tie things up as much as possible beforehand to leave us in a satisfying place for what's coming next. One thing I want to mention, actually I want to correct myself. Last episode, you and I were talking about Teen Titans, and we said there wasn't going to be an issue 100. That's wrong. There's 2 issues this month.
Oh, cool.
Issue 99 is coming out, and also issue 100, which is oversized. It's 48 pages, I believe.
Ruby.
So there is going to be a 100th issue of Teen Titans. That's actually going to be the last issue. So we've got a lot of Teen Titans storytelling coming up this month for that wrap-up. So I just wanted to correct myself for anybody that's a Teen Titans fan out there that was thinking that it's only issue 99. No, there's issue 100 too that will be wrapping up the current arc that's going on. And if you're not reading that book, I highly recommend it.
Holy caffeine!
Again, I want to urge everyone to go to our website and check out the wonderful contests that are from our summer contest. I really, truly enjoyed every one of them. We had 2 songs that were submitted. One was from Eli, who always does an absolutely terrific job. He's done multiple songs before. You've heard him on the show if you've been a long-time listener. He's just incredibly talented, so I wanted to make sure to get this one on the episode. And then there was Jordan's song, which is Jim picked it as one of the winners, and it's terrific. It's another good one. Jordan submitted all of the lyrics, and they're on the website. So he was submitting the lyrics. He put up a song sample, so I'm putting that on here too so you can kind of hear a sampling of where he was going with this. It's really cool. I think, I think everyone who submits anything to the contest is really brave. They're brave and bold. So I really want to thank everyone for doing that because I think it makes just for a fun time of the year. And keep an eye out. We're going to do a fall contest as well.
It's not that easy being freeze in the summer when it's 98 degrees. It's so much easier to succeed with all my evil plans when it isn't so damn hot. No one takes me seriously. People ask me to come to their kids' birthday parties because I can keep their ice cream cakes from melting, make fruit smoothies, or just cool everyone off. Oh, but for the rest of the year, I am a man that all the people fear. I can bring Gotham City to its knees just at the mere mention of my name, Victor Von Fries. Oh, the summer is no fun at all. Batman and Robin won't even take my calls. Why bother? Why bother? Come on, I work with ice. What do I expect? I should just disappear until the fall. Yes, I'll come back a week before Thanksgiving. That'll show them. Nora, would you like another fruit smoothie? Oh, right. I'm so sorry, my dear.
When it's the middle of the summer in the DCU, all of the heroes take a holiday, and all the villains too. They pack their capes and their power rings, tights and golden lasso, and everybody goes surfing DCU. Clark's playing fetch with Crypto around the moons of Mars, and Bruce is back in the Batcave, pimping up his cars. John's been picking up Oreos for the league BBQ. Everybody's gone surfing DCU. Lex is lying in the sun, working on his tan, and the beach is filled with laughter from Joker's lemonade stand. The Legionnaires are playing volleyball, not a crisis in sight. The party lasts all through the day and through the blackest night. From Atlantis to Metropolis, Thanagar to Ram, in the streets of Gotham City and Dinosaur Island. From Apocalypse to Oa and Themyscira too, everybody's gone surfing DCU. Everybody's gone surfing DCU. Everybody's gone surfing DCU. Yeah, everybody's gone surfing DCU.
Once again, our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, remember the special deal they're offering on all 52 DC titles. Regularly $159.48, 50% off, only $79.74. And just to let everyone know, the Justice League issue is included in that, number 2, but it's not the digital and paper combo. It's just the regular issue. You can order the digital and paper combo at a discount as well if you're going that route on it. But this is a special only for all 52 number 2 issues at 50% off, and that's very cool. So go check DCBService.com for that special pre-order. And they are going to be doing a special for issue number 3 as well. I don't know what that looks like public yet, but they said that look for a special next month for that. So that's really cool that DCBService.com is offering that again, knowing that we're pre-ordering and want to try out these books ahead of time. Over at InStockTrades.com, coming up this month, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 1, regularly $14.95, 38% off, only $9.27. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. I actually want to make a quick announcement about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, too. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to be talking Flashpoint number 4, and also the ending of Superman Grounded. We really were thinking about, we were going to do League of Extraordinary Gentlemen next, but we wanted to delay that 1 week because Superman's having tremendous changes coming in August. And we thought it was coming in September. So we felt it was drastically important in August, that's this month, to talk about the ending of Superman Grounded, such a big storyline with the character, and just talk about how the character seems to be wrapping up with the end of August and getting ready to go into next month for him. Because there's big changes in store for that character, so we thought it'd be fun to kind of wrap him up and send him off as we're going down. So that's why we made that change, just to make sure we addressed Superman. So only 1 week delay, and then we're going to be back to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. We have some big things planned for this month. We will see everyone next week.
Bye!
So you're telling me you wave every time?
Every single time I've done the bye. I'm actually sitting at my computer waving, by the way. Yes.
Really?
I talk with my hands naturally, so they fly all over the place. So for some reason, when I'm saying bye, I'm waving, and it's fine. I really wish right now this was a video podcast, because y'all would be seeing me every time I'm sitting here talking, saying how I wave when I'm saying bye. I'm actually waving my hand even now. Stop! It's like the hand thinks it has its own mind.
Do you ever get frightened?
Oh, God, yeah. Sometimes I give myself the creeps.
You think your hand's going to turn on you or something? Or
yeah.
The villains are closing in, be they Thanon Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see your plan.